Hello everyone. This is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki was raised by Kushina's dark secret and became a force of fear across worlds, Naruto times Kushina times Star Wars, Part 2. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. A few hours later, Naruto finally woke up after having his head injury healed, and he found Hinata passed out near him, and he looked over at the training field and thought, okay, what the hell did she do? Get pissed off and destroy anything in her path. Damn, no sleep tonight for me. Might as well get her to her room so she can sleep in her bed. As he stood up and picked her up before carrying her to her room, he then tucked her in bed, and then as he looked at her his eyes went wide and thought, Mom, did she really kiss me? Kushina, who was meditating, saw her son had come inside the seal and said, yes son, she did. Naruto asked with a confused look on his face, does that mean she forgave me? Kushina said, this time no. I was waiting to tell you about this until you were older, but you're probably going to have to explain it to her as well. You both are at that age where your bodies are beginning to mature for adulthood. As such, your bodies are producing hormones that you never had before, and when you get into intense fights where your adrenaline is rushing combined with your mental state, you will get urges. These urges can only be dealt with by two ways: extreme physical activities like Hinata did against those training dummies, or a lot of activities. Naruto's eyes got wide and said, I remember the Twi'leks and Huts talk you gave me. Does this mean that once we get over this changing stage we won't have to worry about it again? Kushina said, actually no, basically it's something you will deal with the rest of your lives. Hinata kissed you in a moment of lost control after you saved her while she was rage-induced. She's still pissed at you, so don't read too much into it so far and don't push her. Naruto nods and said, Mom, why has she changed so much so quickly? Kushina said, with everything that has happened to her, all her emotional shells have been destroyed. Like the mirror room, she has no secrets from herself now, and she's going to have to get used to the real her. She's going to have to build herself her own emotional walls again. Ones she created. It's basically the same thing that was done to Jedi who wanted to join the Sith under Malek, except you're not turning her to the dark side. Naruto sighed and said, okay, I understand. Well, I guess I better go and repair the training ground. As he left his mind, Kushina frowned and thought, I wonder if he's going to try and sleep later tonight. I hope he gets some rest soon. As she looked at her son worried, Naruto began repairing the training dummies Hinata had destroyed, and after 4 hours he finished inside. As he walked up to his room and took a shower and walked to the kitchen to get a glass of warm milk before he drank it and went back to his room. He paused to check in on Hinata and said quietly, good night, Lady Hinata, as he turned and left to go to his room. Hinata opened her eyes after he left and got up out of bed and began exploring the temple. Several hours later, she was walking down the hall when she heard the sound of whimpering. She looked around and thought, who's whimpering? Does he have someone else here besides me? As she began to follow the sound, she soon found the sound coming from a room, and she opened the door and saw a red-headed woman sitting beside Naruto's bed rubbing his hair, looking sad as Naruto was curled into a ball and whimpering. The red-haired woman sighed and said, my poor son, why did they do this to you? As she stroked his hair, Hinata gasped, and the woman turned and saw Hinata there and said, strange, it's okay dear, you can come on in, I won't hurt you. Hinata stepped in slowly, and the woman smiled and said, he won't wake up for a few hours. I put him in a forced sleep so he can get some sleep. He's not actually slept in nearly 2 months. Hinata asked, who are you? The woman said, my name is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, but you can call me Revan. Hinata took a step back and said, Revan, but you're sealed in Naruto, how are you here? Revan sighed and said, I have been trying to find a way to free myself so I can actually be more in my son's life for years, and I have found when he tries to sleep I can get out until he wakes. When he wore himself out after fixing the training dummies and putting you in bed, he came in here to sleep, and I came out and put him into a forced sleep so he can actually get some sleep. Usually he comes inside his mind and sees me so he does not have to sleep. Hinata was confused and asked, but why does he not sleep? Revan sighed and said, He suffers from nightmares nearly every night he does. He doesn't know much about kindness and love from others besides me, and as far as he knows, no one has ever been physically or emotionally kind to him except me. That's the main reason he did what he did to you. He sees that you have the same loneliness he feels inside, though he will never admit it, and he wants to make sure that you have someone there for you. As she looked back at her son, Hinata frowned and said, "You're just trying to trick me into forgiving him." Revan looked at her and said, "No, I am not. Neither I nor my son have actually lied to you. He told you he believed you about being set up. He has told you the truth about everything, from a certain point of view." Hinata said, screamed. "A certain point of view? He set me up, destroyed my life and tricked me. How can you say that so calmly?" Revan sighed and said, "If he did nothing, you would still be getting attacked by Sasuke. Naruto made it where he could protect you from him. If he had not done anything, you would still be hiding under the treatment your family gave you every day that you told him about. If he had not done anything, then the young lady who stands before me now would never have been born, and the shy, timid Hinata would have let everyone walk over her entire life, and died never knowing the real woman she could be. You will learn growing up, Hinata, that a lot of things you view are viewed differently by other people. You know, when Kumo tried to kidnap you. From your point of view, they are the enemy. From their point of view, you are. If you asked a neutral party who was the true enemy, that person would say both of you. Who's right?" Hinata looked at her and started to say something, but then thought and looked down and said, "You're right. I guess from a certain point of view he was trying to help. That's more than my family has ever actually done. To them I am nothing but a weakling." Revan said, "And what are you to Naruto?" Hinata looked at him and walked around the bed and whipped a few hairs away from his face and rubbed his whiskers, and he stopped whimpering and started to actually purr from her stroking, which caused Revan to raise an eyebrow and a giggle from Hinata. Hinata said, "Damn it, I can't stay mad at him when he does that, it's too cute." Revan smiled and said, "No, I suppose not. Listen, Hinata, I don't know what you will decide to do, but give him those 2 months he asked for. If after that time then you can decide what to do, you might actually find yourself liking it here with him. If not, then you won't look back the rest of your life wondering what might have been like I do. If I never have came here, then this village would never have been attacked by Kyuubi, but then my son would never have been born. If I never have joined the war, then all those who died after might not have died. We can't change our past, Hinata. We have to live with the choices we make and forget the rest. Now you have to decide, Hinata, what you want and what's best for you. I must go. My time is nearly up, but he won't wake for a while. Just so you know, Naruto respect you no matter what you decide to do." As she slowly faded away. Inside Naruto, Kushina began panting and looked at her arms and saw they had nearly completely faded away and thought, "Damn it, I am getting weaker. I hope what I did worked though. It cost me a lot of energy though. If only." As she closed her eye and meditated, Hinata looked at Naruto and saw that he had calmed down in his sleep, and she moved her hand away and he moved his cheek out trying to find it, and she giggled and thought, 2 months, that's not too long to ask for. She then left the room and Naruto sighed in his sleep. The next day when Naruto got up, he found Hinata already running the training ground again, and he said, "Hinata, can I talk to you?" Hinata said, 2 months. I will give you your 2 months to convince me to stay. Now what's my training for today, master? Naruto looked at her and said, "All right, from now on I want you to do the dodging exercise 1 hour a day. Every day I will add a new exercise for you to learn until we finish your entire schedule, at which time you will follow it for the rest of your time until you make your decision. Now get off the floor so I can change the course." As he walked over to the wall and pushed another tile, and Hinata asked, "How many of those tiles do you have and how are they changing the field?" Naruto said, "I got 100 different changes for the main hall here, and I may not know a lot about most ceiling, but I have taken storage ceiling to a whole new level. I have thousands of ceiling circles built into the floor. When I press one tile, it seals anything that might be on the floor besides humans, and then unseals whatever tile I pushed." Hinata said, "That seems like a good idea. It saves space and gives you a chance to change things around. Wonder why nobody else does that." Naruto said, "Nobody else has the time and patience to actually set it up. It took me over a year to set it up. Now look at the field." Hinata did and saw there was 20 waterfalls coming out of the walls into small stone water pools, and in the middle of the room was a large empty water pool. Naruto said. Now where the last exercise worked on dodging and flexibility, this one works on speed and strength. What you must do is work on one waterfall at a time and get the water from that waterfall to the gained pool in the center. Once you get that one done, you do it to the next and the next. You do this by taking the bricks of the smaller pools that is holding the water, which each have a number on them, and lift them and then look on the ground between that smaller pool and the larger pool and set them down on the ground on the correct number tile. When all the numbered bricks are set up, water will go to the main pool, but it will not fill it up. The first pool has each brick weighing 5 pounds. The second pool has each brick at 10 pounds, and so on and so forth until each brick on the last pool will weigh 100 pounds. You have exactly 1 hour to do this exercise. If it's not done by that time, the entire field resets and you will take a small 15 break and begin again until you're too tired to stay awake. Tomorrow you will do both exercises for 1 hour each and then learn something else. Here's a hint. Use chakra to make your muscles stronger when you get tired. You can begin when ready. As he walked away, Hinata watched him leave out the main door and began training. Naruto smiled and thought, I feel great today. I can't remember the last time I had such a peaceful sleep. As he made his way through town. About 10 minutes later, Naruto walked up to the Hokage secretary and said, I would like to see the Hokage. She looked at him and said, I'm sorry, he's in a meeting the rest of the day. Naruto looked at the door and thought, she's lying, he's in there alone, and started toward the door. The two chunins by the door said, you can't go in there. Naruto looked at them and did not recognize them and then force slammed both them against the wall. The Sandaime was doing paperwork when he heard 2 hard slams outside his office and a female scream, and the door to his office opened and Naruto looked inside and said over his shoulder, it looks like he's free for a moment, thank you, as he walked in and closed the door. The third looked at Naruto and asked, what are you doing here, Naruto, and what was that about out there? Naruto sighed and said, same old, same old. I asked to see you and your secretary lied and said you were in a meeting for the rest of the day and I could tell you were in here alone. I then went to see you and the two chunins tried to stop me, so they probably need to go to the hospital because I did the same thing I did to those 4 Anbu. The third rubbed his eyes and said, you know you could have requested a meeting. Naruto said, and I would never get that meeting. Until I prove myself, almost nobody is actually going to give me a chance. You know it. I know it, so why bother talking about things we can't change? As for the chunins, they learned I am not some weak little boy they can bully and should not be underestimated. Consider it a training lesson. With a smile. The third sweat dropped and said, I am getting too old for this. So what are you here for? Naruto said, I need to request a mission. The third's ears picked up at this and said, really, and what's that? Naruto said, I am sure you have heard about Hinata and what has happened, right? The third nods and Naruto said, well, she is with me right now as a member of my clan for the next 2 months, at which point she will decide if she wants to join permanently. The third nodded and said, okay, so what is your mission you would like to request? Naruto sighed and said, I am currently helping her get stronger. I have already gotten her completely out of her shell. I can't teach her most of what I am planning for my clan later on, but I can show her a little bit because she's finally getting stronger and for the first time in her life free of the Hyuga clan rules and restrictions. I want her to see exactly what she can become. So what my mission is, I want 4 female ninja, at least Chunin level, and each of them must be respected in their specialty. I want them to come and talk to Hinata and show her fields that she might look into to become a great ninja. I don't care who they are, but I would like one of them to be a master of genjutsu and another in medic and possibly a combat specialist. As for the last one, I don't care. The mission is from 10 a.m. tomorrow to 4 p.m. tomorrow. If Hinata becomes interested in any of the fields she learns about, I would like for them to come by on every Saturday, giving advice of books she can read or any exercises that could help her later to learn. That is the first part of the mission. The third frowned and said, I do like the idea you have to help her, but they won't be able to teach her any techniques until she's an actual ninja, but any books or things like that she can read, like biology books, I will approve. Now what is the second part of the mission? Naruto sighed and said, Hinata is a woman, and since I learned her mother has been dead for many years, I don't know if anyone has given her the talk yet or has explained certain things she will need. I would like at least one of the women who come to teach her to explain those as well. The third nods and said, Alright. I am going to classify this a B rank mission. I will take the money out of your account to pay for it. Is that all? Naruto thought a moment and said, you know any Kenjutsu masters who would be willing to spar? I know 7 different styles and I can do them well, but I want some actual sparring experience before I teach them to Hinata. The third said, I can think of 1 or 2. Does age or skill matter? Naruto said, I want someone who can give me a challenge. I don't care about age or skill level as long as they know how to fight. I don't care if it's 1 or 2 people. The third nodded and said, right. I would have to do A rank for that mission because one of the 2 I am thinking about is a civilian. Naruto nods and said, that's fine. Have them all come tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you can to my place. If you don't mind, can you have Kakashi bring them so I know that you sent them and not someone else? The third said, fine. He's still doing D rank missions anyways for his last prank, so I will pay for that one myself. If you need anything else, let me know. Naruto nods and got up and said, well, I must get back and make sure Hinata has not drowned herself. May the force be with you, Hokage-sama. As he left, the third sighed and thought, now who should I send? When Naruto got back, he saw Hinata still at it and he stopped and watched her and saw she was about to pass out and said, stop Hinata and come here for a moment. Hinata stopped and walked over to him and Naruto said, sit please. Hinata did and said, yes master. Naruto sighed and said, tomorrow Hinata we will be having guest over. I don't know who they will be, but 4 of them will be talking to you about your training and other things. I know you're still mad at me about what I did to you, but please don't tell anyone about it. I have them coming over to talk to you about your training, not to scold me for hurting you. I also want you to watch me tomorrow when I spar with the other 1 or 2 people who come. I am going to be showing several of my Kenjutsu styles that I will be teaching you later. When you finish your first 2 exercises tomorrow, I want you to go and get ready to meet them, but try to dress in case they want you to spar. Do you have any questions? Hinata said, no master. Naruto nods and asked, do you want to talk to me? Hinata said, no master. Naruto sighed and said, I understand. That is all, you can continue. As he got up and left, Hinata watched him leave and looked down and then got up and began training again. Naruto walked into his chamber of solace and waved his hand and curtains fell over the windows shadowing the room, and Naruto pulled out a mask from a scroll and put it on before stepping on a block in the floor and a screen came down from the ceiling. Sasuke was training at his family home when he heard a voice said, what has your foolishness caused? Sasuke recognized the voice and he pulled out the cube and said, where have, as he grabbed his throat, and Razan said, you fool, do you have any idea how many of my plans you ruined by poisoning that girl? I told you to hurt her, not try to kill her. Sasuke finally could breath and said, but master, she's okay. Razan said, just barely, you fool. If you would have killed her, everything you want would be gone. Now you are going to have to back down on a few things or you will never be able to get your revenge. Now Hinata is no longer a Hyuga. You are to leave her alone for now, as well as Naruto. Sometime soon Naruto is going to get some weapons customized. They are a pair of ancient and powerful weapons that can cut through anything. I want you to find out when he does so and where they are being done at and then steal them. You must do it without being caught. Once you have stolen them, I want you to begin learning to use them, but do not be seen learning them or let others know you have them. Do not use them on anyone until I have seen you truly know how to use them. They will aid you greatly in killing your brother. I also want you to become silent. Act like you don't care, but watch for weaknesses in everyone and think how much they are holding you back. How they never stopped Itachi. Bottle up your anger and your hatred for those who do nothing but hold you back and keep you weak. When the time comes, you will release that anger and claim what is rightfully yours. Do you understand? Sasuke said. Yes, my master. Razan said. Good. Now as for you, punishment for your foolishness and for thinking you may question me. And Sasuke felt himself choking again before he was slammed into a tree and then another tree and another tree when a sickening crunch was heard and Sasuke screamed out in pain and Razan said, pain is for the weak. Ignore it. Sasuke bit his tongue and fell to the ground and Razan said, now remember Sasuke, you are mine. I can kill you anytime I want. Now go get yourself healed and get back to training and tell no one about me. Sasuke said in a pained voice, yes master. as he passed out and rosin faded away on the cube. Naruto sighed as he waved his hand and the screen went back up and the curtains raised as he sealed his mask back up and thought, I should just kill him, but I need him for now. Kushina said, do you think it's wise to let him get his hands on a lightsaber, son? Naruto said, yes, but I am giving him the weak ones I made to feed off of chakra instead of the usual energy crystals. He will give me what I need by getting them for now. I hate to say it, but I need him for the time being. Especially if that comes true. Kushina looked down and thought, I know, if that does come true, what will become of you, son? Naruto sat down and began to meditate for the rest of the night. Hinata, when she became too tired to continue training, went toward her room and looked in Naruto's room as she passed by and looked down as she went to get ready, seeing he was not there, and thought, I guess I shouldn't act so cold toward him. And then she saw him whimpering in his sleep and she let a tear fall and thought, damn it, why do I care? I want to be mad at him and hate him, but the more I think about it and the more he tries to help me, I just can't. The next day, after Hinata had done her first 2 exercises and was sitting meditating after refreshing herself, Naruto appeared from the halls and asked, how are you today, Hinata? Hinata said, fine, master. Naruto closed his eyes and said, good. And he moved his hand while he walked toward the entrance, and a block sunk into the wall and the main hall began changing again. Naruto walked outside and saw 7 people standing there, and he blinked at one of them was a girl his age and thought, that's strange. I guess she's the civilian the Hokage talked about. And he walked to the gate and saw Kakashi and said, I take it these are the people I requested, Kakashi. Kakashi said, yes, they are. Naruto nods and he said, thank you all for coming. I must ask that whatever you see inside you do not mention to anyone, because a lot of it is considered clan secrets. I am Naruto Namikaze. Please come on in. As he opened the gate and stepped away from it, Kakashi looked at him and asked, you mind if I come in? Naruto said, sure, as long as you don't use that. If you do, I will destroy it. As he tapped Kakashi headband. Kakashi nodded and Naruto said, then welcome. As they all walked in, Naruto said, please follow me. As he led them up the stairs and inside. Kakashi whistled and said, you changed the main hall. Naruto said, yeah, I have around 100 different training grounds built into this room under seal control. About 20 minutes ago there were waterfalls and pools in here. Naruto walked down the stairs and said, now I know some of you might have known her before, but allow me to introduce you to Lady Hinata. Lady Hinata, these are the women who I told you about yesterday. Hinata looked and smiled and said, hello Kurenai, in a kind voice. Those who have seen or knew her before all raised an eyebrow, and Naruto said, so how far did you get today? Hinata looked at him and said, I got to the 2nd waterfall. Naruto nodded and said, that's good. Now if you don't mind, please introduce yourself for myself and Hinata. As he looked at everyone, Kurenai stepped forward and said, Kurenai, Chunin, Genjutsu. This is Anko, assistant interrogation master and one of the top assassin and poison experts in the village. This is Yugo, Kenjutsu and capture specialist, and this is Atoha, she's a medical specialist. Kakashi said, this man here Naruto is Gecko Hayate, and this girl is a friend of his and part-time student Tenten. Naruto nods and said, well Hinata, you can use the west side of the main hall here and we will take the east side. Now I hope you are both as skilled as the Hokage said, Hayate and Tenten. Hayate coughed and said, I don't see you sword. Naruto said, oh yeah, I can't use my regular weapons against you, so let me get a couple of vibroblades. As he walked over to the wall and pushed on it, and everyone heard stone moving and looked and went wide-eyed as they saw a whole inventory of weapons, and Naruto grabbed a pair of black swords and the wall slid back down a moment later. Hayate said, impressive. Naruto nods and said, okay, since this is a spar we will use the dual circle here. The object is for both of you to force me out of the circle. I have to force you both out. You both can attack me at the same time or separate. It don't matter. As he walked into the center, Tenten said, who do you think you are? There's no way you can beat both of you. Naruto said, really? Prove me wrong. As he tossed them both the vibro blades. Hayate looked at them and said, you mentioned you can't use your regular weapons, why is that and why did you give us these? Naruto said, Because my regular weapons would destroy your weapons unless they were very strong and perhaps chakra enhanced, but I am not for sure. I know they cut through every metal I tried them on as well as stone and trees except those swords because they were made to withstand strikes from mine. Tenten said. I don't believe you. No weapon is that sharp. Naruto said. Really? Tell you what. If my regular weapon can cut through your swords you brought with you, then you use the blades I gave you and don't get mad at me. Deal. Tenten pulled out a scroll and unsealed a sword and said, Deal. Naruto nods and he pulled his cloak to one side and held out his other hand, and a metal tube flew to his hand and it ignited with a snap, his drawing everyone's attention, and a blue blade popped out. Kakashi said. I know that sound. You lied. It was a weapon, but I thought the blade was red. Naruto held out his other hand and another metal tube appeared in his hand and he activated it and it was red, and Naruto said, it was. Deception is a ninja best skill, Kakashi. These are the weapons of my mother's people, the lightsabers. Now I believe we have a bet. Are you ready, Tenten? Hayate looked at the lightsabers and said, they look similar to the Nadime's Raijin. Are they chakra-based? Naruto said. No, I have some that are chakra-based that I plan to teach Hinata later, but mine are systal-based. Now shall we? Tenten took a stance and then went to swing at Naruto, who moved the blue blade too quick for her to see and her sword was cut clean in two, shocking everyone, and Naruto said, like I said, now please use the blades I gave you. Hayate said. I think I will. As he test-swinged it and said, it feels weird. Naruto said. It's designed to use sound waves that it creates from movement to sharpen it and make it stronger. As he stopped using the red blade and took a stance. Tenten grabbed the blade Naruto gave her and then both her and Hayate began sparring with both, and to their shock Naruto was blocking every strike and had yet to move his feet. Over to the side everyone was looking and were shocked, and Hinata said, he's not even trying yet. All the women and Kakashi looked at her shocked, and Kurenai asked, what do you mean, Hinata? Hinata said, he's got his eyes closed. He's acting on instinct so far. Everyone looked back and sure enough he was blocking every strike with his eyes closed. Kakashi said, and you're going to learn to do that? Hinata said, I don't know yet. Kurenai asked, what happened to you? I mean, you change in a good way. Hinata looked at her and smiled and said, Hinata Hyuga was killed by her family. I am now Lady Hinata. No one knew what to say about that, and so they began talking about being a female ninja, and Kakashi left to get a closer view of the match, and then the woman gave Hinata the talk as well as a scroll full of hygiene supplies. After about 30 minutes Hayate stepped back and said, that's enough, Tenten. I have seen enough of that style to know as long as he is not forced to move then he has no openings. Naruto said, correct. That is one of the styles I know. I have another style that is nothing but offense, and then another that allows me to do jutsu, and then one where I fight against large number of enemies, and another where I have to defend while moving, and another where I attack while moving. My last style I created that combines all those other styles together. It's still work in progress, but I think I can use it if I had to. Hayate said. I'm impressed. I might spar with you again sometime, but Tenten and I have to go. I promised her dad I would have her home by noon. Naruto nods and said, thanks for the spar. As they both left after giving Naruto back the vibroblades. Kakashi said, nicely done, Naruto. Not many can last that long against Hayate. Naruto said, no, he was mostly observing me. He did not use his real style against me. I can tell. Kakashi nods and said, well, I have to be going. I was supposed to have a mission after bringing them here, but I decided to be late for it. CYA. As he left, Naruto sighed and said, well, ladies, enjoy your stay, but I am going to meditate. If you need anything, Hinata, just let me know. Hinata nods and Naruto went to relax. Several hours later Kurenai and the other woman left, all pleased with the impression they left on Hinata. Hinata smiled as she crawled into bed that night and thought, so many possibilities, as she drifted off to sleep. The next morning Hinata walked into the main hall and saw Naruto sitting there meditating and said, hello, master. Naruto sighed and said, hello, Hinata, how are you today? As he opened his eyes. Hinata said, I am fine, thank you for asking. Naruto nods and asked, so how did you like talking to those women yesterday? Hinata smiled and said, it was actually very nice. Thank you. Naruto said, I am glad. I wanted to show you what you could be if you wanted to be. I have asked if they would come by on Saturdays to talk with you some more. Now it's time for me to show you a surprise. Hinata looked confused and Naruto said, go to the far right corner of this hall and count 28 tiles down and 16 tiles to the left and send chakra to the 16th tile. Hinata nods and walked to the corner and started counting tiles, and when she got to the 28th tile she saw there was a small crystal light there, and she then counted 16 tiles, and then when she got there she sent chakra to it, and then a rumbling sound was heard and a set of stairs appeared heading down into the ground, and Naruto said, good, now follow me, as he began walking down the stairs. Hinata followed and Naruto said as they began walking through the tunnel, these were originally built by my parents down here for an emergency shelter for the civilians. I plan to make this where my children who can't defend themselves yet after they can be in a room by themselves live, so that way I know what nearly happened to you won't happen to them. I plan to put video cameras and monitors down here so if they need me or one of their mothers and we are not down here we can come quickly, but that's still down the road. That is not what I brought you down here for. What I did is at the end of this hall. Hinata said. You seem to be planning for everything, Naruto-kun. Naruto stopped in his tracks and she went wide-eyed covering her mouth, and Naruto said, relax Hinata. I am not going to punish you for that. I just wanted you to call me master, not for you but as a reminder to me. Hinata blinked and asked, what do you mean? Naruto said, my mother did the same thing to me when she began training me. She did it so I would know that when I am training I am her student, not her son. That way when I got hurt during training I had to learn to deal with it, because if I get hurt in battle I can't run and cry to my mother or hope someone is going to come and save me. I am on my own most likely. It's the same thing for you. Besides what happened when you were a baby, you have pretty much led a sheltered life, Hinata. You had people guarding you everywhere you go. It led you into a false security that could get you killed later in life. If I could I would protect you from everything in life, but I know I can't. There will be a time where I won't be there to save you, and I know you need to know how to save yourself. That is why I asked you to call me master. Hinata smiled and said, I understand, master. Naruto asked, are we training right now? Hinata said, no. Naruto said, then you can call me whatever you want. I may be older than you a little, Hinata, and I may be an asshole sometimes, but I am still human as well. I have my flaws. I don't know everything. I just do what I think is best and never think what I could have done different later. Now are you ready to see the surprise? Hinata said. Yes, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled and asked as they began walking, are you happy here, Hinata? Truthfully. Hinata's smile slipped and said, I don't know yet. Naruto nods and said, I understand. I know you probably like the training and the new things you are learning, but you don't like me. That's okay. I understand. Like I said, I did what I thought was best, and though I might be able to think of something different now, things could have been worse now than they were. I only hope you can forgive me later. Well, here we are. Go ahead and go on inside. As he stepped aside, Hinata walked to the door and opened it and gasped. Inside was a library, and Hinata looked at Naruto, who smiled and said, I had the Hokage bring me a lot of books to read on different things. I brought you here because I figured if you want to look more into medical field or one of the others, these books might be useful. I also have a few training jutsu my father left me that I moved down here. Nothing in this room is restricted to you. There's not any dangerous jutsu either here if you want to learn them. The ones that are I have in a special vault under blood seals, so no one but me can get them for now. A lot of people would kill to get their hands on my father's two famous jutsu if they could. Now every day when you're training there are going to be a few 1-hour breaks to allow you body to recover so you don't wear yourself out. Now after your first 2 exercises you can take one, and then after an hour break in which you can come and get you something to read or work on anything you want that is not physical exercise. I don't want you to hurt yourself. Now follow me and I will explain to you the 3rd exercise because I have something to take care of, but I will be back after that. Okay. Hinata said. Yes, master. Naruto closes his eyes and nods, and he leads her away from the library and asked, you do remember which blocks on the wall changes the fields for the first 2 exercises, right? Hinata said, yes, master. Naruto nods, and when they got back upstairs Naruto said, go ahead and channel chakra into that stone you did before so the ground resets. Hinata did, and Naruto walked over to the wall, and Naruto said, "Now this will be your third exercise," as he pushed a brick. Hinata watched which one it was and asked, "Master, I noticed that all the bricks you have hit are under one of those light crystal. Are all of them that way?" Naruto said, "Very good. Yes, they are. That was a test on observation. You picked it up rather quick. I thought it would have taken until the fifth exercise before you caught it. You proved me wrong." With a smile, Hinata smiled at the praise she received, and she watched as the field changed and stone pillars rose from the ground and connected together to form an arch, and Naruto said, "Now this exercise is chakra training. I figure you already know some chakra exercises, correct?" Hinata said, "Yes, tree climbing and water walking." Naruto said, "Well, for my training you're not ready for water walking yet." Hinata was shocked and started to say something, and Naruto said, "Let me explain, please." "Okay, the reason I said that is because water walking eats at your chakra faster than tree climbing. I bet if you do water walking at your current level you run out within about 15 minutes, right?" Hinata sighs and nods, and Naruto said, "I realize that. I am not saying you can't know the exercise, but I want you to be able to stay on the water for a full hour before without stopping. Right now you're still building your reserves, which are larger than all the other girls in our class, by the way, but they are still smaller than most of the boys besides Shikamaru. It's not your fault. Women naturally have better control but smaller reserves, but if they work hard they can overcome that setback. That is one of the bonus to the first two exercises I have you do. Chakra is a combination of physical and spiritual energy. 2 hours of physical training and 1 hour of mental training would give you probably another 3 minutes of chakra to use before you run out, but then you don't have the control for those 3 minutes you would have. That is why I got this exercise for you. I want you to run for now on the top of the arch. It's harder than regular tree climbing because the slope is slanted to so much a degree, if you stop running you will slide back down. When you can do this exercise for 1 hour 3 days in a row, I then want you to run on top, and then when you get to the other side run back on the bottom and keep going back and forward until you can go 7 days doing that, and then do all of it on the bottom. That way you are forced to constantly improve and get harder. When I add weight training next week it will be even harder for you." Hinata asked, "When will I be ready for water walking, master?" Naruto said, "Good question. Remember the waterfall exercise. When you can do that exercise completely with 10 minutes to spare before it resets so it can fill the pool up, then you will be ready for water walking. That is actually exercise 10 if you want to know, and you wouldn't get it until you can do all 9 of the ones before it." Hinata nods and said, "Then I have a goal to work toward, master." Naruto said, "That's the spirit, Hinata. I knew you were strong." Hinata smiled and said, "Well, I better get to training." Naruto sighed and said, "Yeah, I have some things I need to do also. That reminds me, Hinata. I don't know if I said it before or if you knew it already, but if you ever want to leave or take a break from training you can. I got the feeling I might have made it where you thought you were a slave or servant or something like that. You're not. I just forgot to tell you because I wanted to make sure Sasuke knew he can't touch you again. If he does I will hurt him, and before long I think you will be able to hurt him as well. I guess I spent so much time here with just mom over the last years I forgot people like to walk around and do things besides training." Hinata looked at him and said, "Thank you. I was wondering about that." Naruto said, "No problem. Good luck today. I will see you later." As he left, Naruto left his grounds and walked toward town, and he walked into the Uchiha district and started to scream, "Oi, Sasuke, you here?" After a few minutes of this, Sasuke appeared sweating and asked, "What do you want and why are you here?" Naruto said, "Look, I just came by to tell you that Hinata is no longer a Hyuga and I want you to leave her alone. She's now a member of my clan and under my protection. You mess with her and I will kill you. Do you understand?" Sasuke was seething inside at the threat and said, "Yeah, I understand," controlling his anger. Naruto said, "Good. Now I got to go get Hinata presents customized. I hope she likes them. They're perfect weapons for her." As he began walking away, Sasuke thought, "That's what Master was talking about. I better follow him." As he waited a moment for Naruto to leave before he started to follow, Naruto felt him and smirked and thought, "Never mess with the son of a former Sith Lord." As he walked through town, After about 10 minutes, he found the wolf claw weapon shop and he entered and saw Tenten there and he said, "Whoa, I didn't know you worked here." Actually surprised. Tenten saw him narrowing her eyes and asked, "What do you want?" Naruto held up his hands and said, "Hold it. I don't mean any harm here. I just came to get a couple of weapons customized and my father's notes said this is where he got his weapons from." Tenten sighed and said, "Sorry, so what do you need?" Naruto unsealed a scroll and a wooden box popped out and Naruto set it on the counter and opened the lid and said, "This is what I was talking about. These are those chakra blades I told you about. I am planning to give them to Hinata for her birthday and I wanted to get them customized." Tenten looked inside the box and saw 2 silver tubes and she asked, "What do you want done with them?" "I don't know anything about them so I am not sure we can customize them." Naruto said, "Trust me, it won't be hard. The actual working of them can't be gotten to unless you know how to, but what I want is to have a wooden grip put on them to make it where it would be harder to see them and then have a life seal placed on them so no one but her can use them until she dies. I read this shop has done those before with swords." Tenten said, "Yeah, it will take probably about a month to finish though. Wooden grips for anything not metal based like swords take longer to get because we have to custom order them from a logger we have a deal with. Is that okay?" Naruto nods and said, "Yeah, that will work. I will pick them up in a month. Hinata birthday's a week after that anyways." Tenten nods and said, "Right. I will put them in the safe in back until then." As she took the box and the lightsabers and put them in the safe. When she came back she had a piece of paper in her hands and said, "So your order does not get mixed up, I have this receipt for you. It's got the number 32 on it so that way if dad is here and not me you can get them." Naruto took the paper and put it in his pocket and said, "Well, I guess I will see you later." Tenten nods and said, "See you." Naruto began walking out and saw Sasuke glancing at him from the corner of the store window and he turned to head back toward the house and Sasuke thought, "Now's my chance." As he walked up to Naruto said, "Hey, what time you got?" Naruto pulled his hand out of his pocket and Sasuke saw the small receipt fall out as Naruto looked at his watch and said, 9:15, why? Sasuke said, "I have a meeting with someone and wanted to make sure I am not late." "Thanks." As he took a few steps and put his foot on the paper and he looked down and tightened his strap on his sandals and grabbed the paper from under it and walked away. Naruto smirked as he saw this and thought, "You're still too stupid to think you're better than me, Sasuke. I had planned that already, fool." Naruto then began to whistle a Rodian jig he learned from him mom as he walked back toward his house but a man bumped into him and said, "Pardon me, youngling," as he walked on by. Naruto blinked as he was called that and thought, "Mom, did he just call me what I think he called me?" As he looked back and saw the man was walking toward the gates. Kushina narrowed her eyes and said, "Follow him, son. Something's not right." Naruto nods and he reached his hand behind him and went wide-eyed and thought, "My lightsabers, they're gone." As he began to chase after the man who had already made it outside the gate. As Naruto approached the gate, 2 Chunins went to block him as they said, "Wait, you." Naruto ignored them and force jumped over them and sped into the woods following the guy as fast as he could. After about 30 minutes Naruto stopped in a clearing having lost track of the guy and he began to look around and he felt something in the force and said, "Okay, you can come out now. I know you're there." The man he had followed before stepped out from behind a tree and held up Naruto lightsabers. Naruto asked, "Who are you and how did you know of those?" The man said, "I haven't met a Jedi yet that hasn't had at least one of these on them. So tell me, what's a Jedi doing all the way out here?" Naruto said, "I am no Jedi." The man said, "Ah, a Sith then." Naruto said, "Nope, not a Sith either." The man looked at him and said, "Really? Then why do you have these then?" Naruto said, "Who are you and what do you want?" The man said, "The name's not important. I've been following you since I saw the funky Jedi temple in town. Nice trick back there with the boy. Actually had him thinking you fell for his what time is it trick." Naruto said, "Look buddy, you don't know who you're messing with here. If you don't start answering my questions I am going to put you in a world of pain." The man smirked and said, "Boy, you got nothing on me. I may not look it but I am probably the only Jedi who could fight Revan toe to toe. Now as for who I am, you can call me Ramsey." Naruto narrowed his eyes and said, "You're the guy who was responsible for the massacre at Malachor V." Ramsey said, "That I am, though. How do you know that? You're too young to have been alive then." Naruto said, "I have my ways. Now tell me, Ramsey, what do you want here?" Ramsey said, "Revan, I am looking for her." Naruto asked, "For what?" Ramsey said, "The Republic needs her. After she left, new Sith Lords appeared and nearly destroyed the Jedi. We defeated them, but only a handful of Jedi are left." Naruto said, "Sorry, the best place for Revan is where she is at the moment. If she were able to leave her, she would still stay here because there is more going on in this sector of space than you know." Ramsey said, "You know a lot about her, so how can you be sure?" Naruto smirked and Ramsey was slammed into a tree and Naruto pulled his lightsabers to him and said, "I'm her son." Ramsey rubbed his jaw as he stood up and said, "Well, that's surprising. I didn't even have time to defend from that attack." Naruto said, "Yeah, mom's full of surprises." Ramsey's eyes went wide and looked around and said, "Revan's nearby." Naruto smirked and said, "From a certain point of view. Now go back to the Republic and tell them Revan's dead. Now I have things I need to do, so if you will excuse me, I must be going." Ramsey activated his own green lightsaber and said, "I am afraid it's not that easy, kid. You see, me and a few others have come here to get her, even if it's by force. Now if I have to capture you to bring her here, then I will." Naruto sighed with his back to Ramsey as he pulled out something from his cloak and he slipped on his hood and said, "Then I am afraid that we will have to do this the hard way. By the way, the name's Darth Rosin." As he turned around and fired a bolt of force lightning at Ramsey. Ramsey defended by blocking with his lightsaber and saw Naruto had his mask on and he said, "So you are a Sith?" Naruto said, "I already told you once, no. I am not a Jedi or a Sith. I am a combination of both. I do not divide the Force into the light or dark side because I am one with the Force." As he activated both his lightsaber and then took up a defensive stance. Ramsey said, "Then this will be fun." As he got ready as well. As both Force user got ready to fight each other, Kushina said, "Son, stop. Say exactly what I tell you. This fight is meaningless and will blow your cover and your empire impossible and all will be lost. You can't let a stupid fight like this now ruin everything." Naruto frowned and deactivated his lightsaber, surprising Ramsey, and he said, "Who exactly is with you? You said you and a few others are here looking for my mother, so who is with you?" Ramsey asked. "Why should I tell you?" Naruto said, "Because I am the only link you will find to Revan. I am the only one who knows where she is and how to get her. You have no choice, not even a Hutt would be able to get this information. Besides, when you learn the truth of why she was here and what's going to happen, you will see it's best for the Republic if she stays here." Ramsey looked at Naruto for several minutes and deactivated his weapons and said, "I have come with Bastilla, Jolie, Mandalore and the rest of the Mandalorians." Naruto's eyes got wide a moment and said, "Really? As he looked around a moment and asked, "How long have you all been here and how come I can't feel you in the Force?" Ramsey said, "No, sorry. I won't tell you that until you tell me where Revan is." Naruto sighed and said, "I have a telepathic link to my mother and she was the one who ordered me not to fight and wanted to know who was with you. She said if you want to know where she is to bring Bastilla, Jolie, and Candace with you and she will speak to you in our home, but tell Candace to come without his armor. The people of this world have no knowledge of space travel even though soon they will." Ramsey asked, "Who is Candace?" Naruto put his mask away and said, "Mom said that is the name of Mandalore. She said he was planning to gather his people the last time she saw him, so she knew he would do it. She also said no blasters. There will be no worry about attack as you have both her word and mine and I do not break my word. Now I can feel Anbu coming to find me since I basically told security to kiss my back there, and unless you want to have to fight your way in, I suggest we act like you dropped your money pouch or something and I came to return it." Ramsey frowned and before he could say anything 4 figures appeared in mask in the trees around them but stayed hidden, and Ramsey said, "Thank you again, kind sir. I will take you up on that offer next time I am in town. I don't know what I would have done if you had not returned my money. I must be going because I have a meeting in a few days with some friends. I might be able to see you in about 2 months, maybe less." Naruto nods and said, "That fine. I must be going as well since it seems that someone thinks I can't defend myself or something like that. Well, have a good day, sir, and may the force be with you. As he bowed and started to leave, and Ramsey said, and with you, young Padawan. Naruto frowned and said, very well for now. As the Anbu who arrived after sweat dropping having been discovered landed beside Naruto and asked, what is going on here, Namikaze? We were informed you bypassed village security. Naruto said, my new friend Ramsey here had bumped into me on his way out of town and dropped his money pouch. I saw it, but he didn't, and he had already made it out of the village before I could catch up with him, so I ran after him to return it since I know what it's like to be broke. I must be going now. Good day. As he began walking toward the village, Ramsey, who had started to walk away, sweat dropped and thought, that kid's just as bad as a Sith Lord, but I don't sense any hatred from him. A few minutes later, Naruto had made it back inside the village and headed for home, and he thought, what are we to do, Mom? I mean, how do we explain things to them, and why are you so giddy all of a sudden? Kushina smiled and said, it's a surprise, son. Naruto thought, you know I hate surprises. The last time you said that you destroyed Kyuubi mind and left me with its power and a brain-dead fox in my cage, and finding out my plans for the future are going to be, and forced me to start planning to gain me an empire I never wanted. Kushina said, true, son, but at least now you have time to get ready. Naruto sighed and thought, I understand why you became a Sith, Mom. Kill 1,000,000 to save billions. What a day. What the hell is that girl doing? As he sped toward his temple. When he arrived, he found Hinata holding her ankle with tears in her eyes, and Naruto ran to her and saw she had made it to the third exercise, and he said, shush, it's okay. I can help. As he got to her foot and began a small medical scan, and he saw it was sprained and said, it's just a sprain, but I know it must hurt. Now just hold still while I fix it, okay? As he flashed through a few hand signs, and his hand began to glow green, and he started healing her ankle. After about 10 minutes he stopped and asked, how does that feel? Hinata said, better. Thank you. In a quiet voice. Naruto walked over and picked her up bridal style, getting an eep from her, and he said, well, it's still hurt, and I forbid you from training the next few days until I say so, because I don't want you hurting yourself anymore. Hinata was beet red in his arms, and Naruto carried her to a room she had not been in before, which looked like a simple 20 by 20 square room, and he asked, do you have your bra and panties on? Hinata looked confused a moment and was going to ask why, but realized if he said something like that it was for a reason, and said, yes. Naruto said, good, I want you to strip down to them while I change this room. As he sat her down on a bench built into the wall. Hinata frowned as she began taking her cloths off, and Naruto was still in the room, and Naruto said, I know, but I am not leaving you alone until your body had a chance to get used to your weakened ankle, so for now I am going to have to help you. As he pushed the second tile by the door, and Hinata saw the room began to change, and her eyes went wide and said, a hot spring. As the tiles moved down and back to make a set of steps, and then a hot spring was revealed. When she looked over at Naruto again, she blushed beet red and saw he was only in a pair of black boxers and his mucles, and he walked over and said, sorry, I don't have any swim cloths and usually only wear something like these since it's been just me, and I don't want to have to dig through your cloths to find any swimsuit you might have. Now hold still. As he picked her up and walked down into the water and set her down on the steps in the water and said, there, this was supposed to be a present when you finished your 5th exercise, but things don't always go like you planned. Ah well, I will just have to get you something else. As he stepped back away from her and sat on the other side to allow her a chance to relax. After a few minutes of Naruto being away from her, she began to relax, and Naruto saw this and smiled and said, so how much have you been trying to feel the force, Hinata? Hinata asked, what do you mean? Naruto said, do you know how I knew you were hurt? I felt your pain through the force. That tells me you have connected to the force more than I thought, so how long have you been trying to feel it? Hinata was embarrassed, and Naruto said, don't worry, I am not mad, just surprised. Hinata sighed and said, ever since the first night I was here. I spoke to your mom. Naruto sat straight up, wide-eyed, gaping, and Naruto thought, Mom, is that true? Kushina said, yes. Naruto gaped and asked, but how? I mean, how did you talk to her? Kushina said, through the force. Now pay attention, you scared the poor girl. Naruto blinked and saw Hinata was startled, and he said, Sorry, I was asking mom and I was shocked. That's all. So what have you found and what did you talk about? Hinata said. She just proved to me the force was real and since then I've been trying to feel it. At first I couldn't and nearly gave up but then I felt a glow. I can't really explain it but it was very far away. I can feel I am getting closer to it but not very fast. Naruto sighed and said, yeah, it takes an open mind and a relaxed body to get it. It also helps to be surrounded by life. I will take you to my garden sometime so you can try it there if you want to keep trying but I ask that you don't try to mold the force. If you do that is when it gets dangerous and you could destroy yourself. I don't want that to happen. I had only intended for you to learn enough to use force sight which allows you to see a few seconds into the future to aid you in battle. The other things like making things float or attacking things I won't teach you because they are too dangerous. I was not joking about needing to be trained from a young age but I will help a little since you showed so much determination already but please, I want your word that you will not try to learn to mold the force. Hinata smiled and said, alright, I promise. Naruto said, good, now go ahead and relax for now and when you get ready to get out let me know and I will help you to your room and fix you dinner. I figure tomorrow all the swelling and healing will be finished and you will be able to walk normally but no training until the next day and I want you to take it easy then. After that then you can try to go back to full training. Okay. Hinata said. Okay Naruto. Naruto smiled and said. Good, then relax. As he laid back and closed his eyes to relax. Naruto did not realize it but he soon fell asleep and began to whimper again in the water and it drew Hinata attention and she frowned and thought. What happened to you to cause you to have constant nightmares? As she half swam and walked on one leg toward him in the water. When she got next to him she began to gently run her hand across his cheek and his hair and he calmed down and she smiled and thought. It's the least I can do. As she sat down beside him and continued to stroke his head. Hinata sighed and for the next several hours, longer than she should have she stayed by his side in the water and finally when she felt her body becoming tired she woke him up. Naruto awoke from her calling his name and he said, sorry about that Hinata, I guess I must have been tired from a long day. You must be ready to get out. Hinata nods and Naruto began to get out and he felt how waterlogged his body was and he looked at her and asked, how long were we in here? Hinata said, I don't know, I fell asleep also. Naruto sighs and he picks her up and carries her out of the water and she laid her head on his chest and said, don't worry about my cloths, I will get them tomorrow. Naruto nods and took her to her bathroom and got her a towel and her bathrobe and gave her a few minutes alone in there until she called to him and he got her and helped her to her bed and then said, good night Hinata. Hinata said, good night Naruto-kun. As she rolled over and started to fall asleep. Naruto left her and went up to his chamber of solace and after putting on his mask and then closing the curtains he waved his hand and soon Sasuke appeared on the screen and said, yes, my master. Razan said, how has your task gone today my apprentice? Sasuke said, fine sir, I was able to get the item from the store after using a henge and taking a receipt tag when the clerk changed. Razan said, good, now I have an important matter for you. There is a council man by the name of Danzo. He is the leader of a group called Root. I wish for you to talk to him privately and tell him that he has an offer for him. Tell him in exchange for a few favors you will vote in favor of anything he wants when you gain your clan seat. You are not to tell him about me or that anyone told you to do it but tell him you heard about his secret army and figures he would be willing to help you get stronger. You will ask him for jutsu and kenjutsu lesson and a pair of swords. You will learn to use a regular sword first and those weapons second. If he tells you no then tell him that you will oppose everything he votes for then and he will lose votes he needs to keep his army going. Do not promise to join him or anything like that but keep it all political. Once you have them keep the swords with you at all times to get used to them and practice what he gives you but make sure you do not show anyone those weapons. Once Namikaze discovers they are gone he will most likely cause an investigation. Now go and do as ordered. Your day of revenge comes close. Sasuke said. Yes, my master. As he faded from the screen. Naruto sighed and began to meditate instead of sleep. For the next 2 days Hinata listened to Naruto and she did not exercise the first day and only light exercises the second day. Today was Saturday and Naruto saw Hinata training and he saw Kurenai walk in and waved to her and she came over toward him as she looked at Hinata running the waterfall exercise and she asked, "What's going on here and how is this room so different?" Naruto said, "Ah, the power of seals. As for what she's doing, this is a strength and endurance test. The first waterfall has bricks weighing 5 pounds, the second 10 and so on and so forth until the last one reaches 100 pounds. She has to pick up each brick that has a number on it and put it on the correct number tile in less than an hour." Kurenai thought and asked, "Is that even possible?" Naruto said, "Low Chunin speed takes around 46 minutes. If she decides to join my family then by the time we graduate I hope she might be up to Low Junin in speed." Kurenai asked, "About that, why is she with you?" Naruto said, "Different things. One is protection from Sasuke, another is to help her keep getting stronger as you can obviously see she's getting better and a few other things. That reminds me, if you have any exercises today planned for her take it easy on her because she sprained her ankle a couple of days ago doing chakra control exercises. I made her rest a whole day and take it lightly yesterday and it should be okay but I feel better with at least another day of light work." Kurenai looked at him out of the corner of the eye and asked, "What do you get out of all this?" Naruto said, "Wait till her birthday, all will be answered on that day. Now if you will excuse me I need to see to some things." As he walked over and pushed a brick in the wall and a door opened up and Naruto walked inside it before the door closed behind bricks and Kurenai shook her head and thought, feels like a carnival funhouse sometimes. Naruto walked down a corridor and came to a room full of electronic wires and other things and he walked over to a table and began working on what was on the table and thought, "Hey mom, do you have any idea how we are going to find him? I mean I don't like the idea of not feeling that guy in the force." Kushina said, "No son, I wish I did but he's good." Naruto sighed and went back to work on his project. A few hours later Naruto walked out and saw the entire main hall looked like a field of flowers and he put his hands together and said, "Kai," as he sent a small chakra pulse breaking the genjutsu. He saw Hinata and Kurenai sitting there and Hinata asked, "How did you know?" "I thought I had that down perfect." Naruto said, "Hey, I built this place so I know everything about it so I know there are no flowers in this part of the temple. Genjutsu is only good when it's believable but good job, anyone else and they would never know. I have an unfair advantage by knowing the area." Hinata frowned a moment and then smiled at the end of his speech and Naruto said, "Hey Kurenai, you wouldn't happen to know where Kakashi is would you?" Kurenai said, I think he's cleaning the Inazaku kennels." "Why?" Naruto said, "Oh nothing. I got something for him." As he left, Kurenai asked after he was gone, "So, what is it like being here Hinata?" Hinata sighed and said, "It's better than the Hyuga clan. He doesn't try to force me to do anything really except for a few minor things that seemed weird at first but after doing them I see why he wanted me to do it some ways so I don't get hurt. That's how I sprained my ankle by not listening to his safety instructions. I was being stupid but he was here in just a few minutes and then he pampered me with the hot spring and then my room and he carried me so I wouldn't injure it again after he had just fixed it." Kurenai saw Hinata looking as if remembering something and asked, "Do you like it here?" Hinata frowned a moment and said, "I don't know yet. I mean there are things I like and I am learning a lot and getting stronger and I feel happier than I have ever felt but there is something that has bothered me ever since he told me and at first I was mad at him and I still am but not as much. He did what he thought was best at the time to help me but it didn't work." Kurenai asked, "What do you mean?" Hinata said, "It's nothing Kurenai. It's just something to do with the fallout of what happened with the Hyuga clan. I realize now that to the Hyuga clan I am nothing but a tool to be used and thrown away or sold." Kurenai frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Hinata sighed and said, "I have now less than 2 months to make a decision Kurenai. It's one that will affect me the rest of my life. On one hand I might be able to go back to the Hyuga clan but on the other hand I can stay here with Naruto-kun but I also have the option of leaving and going elsewhere but if I did that I think it would hurt Naruto. He keeps telling me that I need to do what I think is best for me but I don't know. He's right about something though. I have been sheltered too much in my life." Kurenai was torn and thought, "I may not know everything that's going on but it sounds like Naruto made some kind of deal to allow Hinata to return to the Hyuga clan if she wanted to. If so, then why work so hard to help her? I just don't understand. And she said, I think he makes a lot of sense. Do what you think is best. Hinata smiled and they continued their lesson. Naruto was walking down the street and he was walking toward the Inazaku vet clinic where their kennels were and he saw Sasuke walking and thought, what's he up to? As he jumped up on a roof and started to tail Sasuke and saw him enter an apartment building and he thought, what are you doing here, Sasuke? He then used the force to help him track Sasuke and found he stopped outside a door and he knocked. Naruto was watching the window for that door and he saw it was Mizuki's apartment and he thought, what's he doing here seeing Mizuki? He watched as Sasuke handed Mizuki a scroll and then left and he then snuck into Mizuki's apartment using a mind trick to make Mizuki not notice him and he saw Mizuki sat the scroll on the counter and Naruto walked over and opened it and began to read and saw it was orders to change Naruto test papers to where he failed and Naruto thought, perhaps it's time Danzo met Darth Razan. As he rolled up the scroll and left and released the mind trick before he continued toward where Kakashi was. Naruto found Kakashi cleaning the kennels and he asked, so what did you do this time? Kakashi looked up and said, covered all the dogs in itching powder making everyone think they had fleas. I had to wash them all and then clean the kennels. Naruto smirked and said, here, a gift for you. Kakashi caught a scroll Naruto tossed him and he opened it and saw a storage seal and he pushed chakra in it and out popped a pair of sunglasses and Naruto said, uncover your eye and put them on while sending chakra to your hands. Kakashi did and when he put them on he blinked and said, hey, it's not draining me. How? As he looked at Naruto. Naruto said, my mother knows a lot about chemistry and metallurgy, some of which are strange alloys called durasteel and other things. The glasses are made from a special metal chemical bonding called duraglass. It's 100 times stronger than glass and is nearly impossible to break. I had one side double tinted so all you have to do is add chakra to your eyes and a seal I found in dad's notes will make them clear so you can see to attack but the best part is that they are chakra sealed. They can't fall off in battle unless you send chakra to your hands and take them off. It will only recognize your chakra. The seal I used dad had put in the interrogation room so you can watch someone while they can't see you. Kakashi said, thanks, what do I owe you? Naruto said, there's a jutsu I want. I think it would be perfect for me because of my situation and I thought you might have it. Kakashi asked, what one? Naruto said, Cage Bunshin. Dad's notes told me he used them for paperwork and anything they learned he learned after dispelling. I figure with my large reserves and good control I might be able to get some serious use of it. I hate having to pay an A- rank mission for a sparring partner. If I can use Cage Bunshin then not only can I get better but then I can also see my mistakes. Kakashi frowned a moment and said, alright, I will teach it to you but you have to show me that you can use it properly. Agreed. Naruto said. Agreed. That reminds me, do you know anything about restriction seals? Kakashi said. Not much, why? Naruto looked around and walked closer where they were only inches apart and said, when Hinata was in the hospital Hiashi and I found one on her. We think it was put on her when the Cloud Nin tried to kidnap her. I was wanting to release it for her. Kakashi asked, is this when that guy was in her hospital room? Naruto nodded and Kakashi said, no, I don't know how to remove them and Ibiki and Anko both questioned the guy and found out he was telling the truth. I had to follow him out of the village to make sure he wasn't lying. I know someone who might be able to do it but I don't know when he will be around. Naruto sighed and said, Jiraiya right. Kakashi nodded and Naruto said, yeah, Mom said the same thing but she hates the pervert. Well I better be going. Something has come to my attention I will have to deal with. As he left and thought, you will make a perfect test subject for the visors Kakashi. I am having to test and retest all these devices Mom wanted me to try and make and since most of the actual material needed does not exist here I am having to substitute lower grade materials. As he walked toward the Uchiha district. He slipped into a house and put on his mask and cloak he keeps with him at all times sealed away and then he went to where Sasuke was eating in his house and said, how is your progress, my apprentice? Sasuke turned around with his chopstick still in his mouth wide-eyed and said, Master, what are you doing here? Razan said, what was in that scroll you carried to Mizuki and who sent it? Sasuke said, Danzo my lord and I don't know what was inside it. He told me if I could do a few tests of trust to test my dedication, he would fulfill my request for training. Razan said. Do not be fooled by Danzo promises, my apprentice. He will try to manipulate you to get what he wants. He is nothing but a stepping stone for you. You are mine, and should you follow my orders, I will give you a seat of power in my empire. An empire that will consume this world soon. How does that sound, my apprentice? Sasuke said. Good, my master. Razan said. Then do not be fooled. I have set you on the path to greatness, but I can destroy you just as easily. Do not think of betraying me, or I will place your head on a silver platter at your brother's feet. As I have chosen you as my apprentice, I can choose him as well, making him more powerful than you will ever become without me. Do you want that? Sasuke quickly said. No, master. I promise I will never betray you. With pleading in his voice. Razan said. Good, now clean up this mess. As a body fell out of the closet dead. Sasuke was wide-eyed, and Razan said, Danzo put a spy of his on you to test you. I have killed him when he heard too much. Destroy the body, but keep the mask and cloths until I ask for them. Now I must go. As he turned and left. Sasuke was shaken by seeing a dead body in his house like that, and quickly began dragging it out of the house. Naruto sighed and thought. You didn't have to do that, Mom. I could have. Kushina said. I know, son, but I don't want you to have your hands stained with blood yet. Naruto nods after he made sure no one was around and left the Uchiha district, heading toward his home, and thought. Mom, what do you think about the ones who have come looking for you? Kushina sighed and said. If they help us with what must be done, son, I think we could go back with them later if you wanted to. Naruto was deep in thought a moment and thought. We will see, Mom. I feel like there is more going on here than what you and I know. I feel something is hiding in the darkness. Kushina said. I know, I feel the same way, but until all this comes to pass, we won't know. For now, we can only prepare. Naruto nods and walked back into the temple and saw Anko was there and thought. I am glad I put that heat reading sensor security grid for the gate, so on Saturdays those women can come and go and Hinata can anytime without having me here. Everyone else is still locked out. It's surprising what you can make with the right equipment, and once Kakashi gives me that just you, I will have my own army of factory workers. Anko saw Naruto and said. So Gaki, what's with this temple you built? I mean, why a temple and not a house? Naruto said. It's a modified version of my mother's people home. It's a way to honor my mother. Anko nods and Hinata said. Naruto, is it okay if I learn taijutsu from Anko? She said she thinks I would do good with her style. Naruto said. It's your choice, Hinata. I told you to do what you think is best. I think knowing another style besides the Hyuga one would be good, because then you would be harder to fight. That reminds me, I got a present for you. Be right back. As he walked back to the wall he did earlier, and after the door appeared, he walked in, and a few minutes later he came out with a scroll and he handed it to her and said, Go ahead and open it. Kurenai and Anko both watched as Hinata opened the scroll, and both women were shocked when out popped out some weird body armor, and Naruto said, That armor is called Ichani fiber armor. Mom taught me how to make it, and it can withstand most light weapons and glancing blows. It's also made of a mesh alloy, so that way you can still move freely without restriction. I want you to start wearing it under your normal cloths, so that way you can get used to it, and so that way if you are ever attacked you can go longer in the fight with less damage. Kurenai asked. Why would she need that? No. I mean, I know later that would be useful, but she's still several years from actual combat. Naruto said. My mother told me the best armor is the ones you have that you don't need, because the day you don't think you need it is the day you get killed because you don't have it. Besides, if she learns to wear armor now, she will not have to later on. How many ninja do you know get hurt bad before they learn to buy armor? Kurenai frowned and said. Your mother sounds like she's seen a lot of the war. Naruto said. Yeah, she did. Now if you will excuse me. I need to rest. As he walked away. After Naruto was gone, Hinata asked. Kurenai, I was wondering. Do you know anything about Naruto past? Kurenai looked at her and said. A little. Why? Hinata said. He doesn't sleep often, and when he does he always has nightmares. His mom said it was because of what happened when he was little, and I thought you could tell me what happened that caused him so much pain. Kurenai's eyes softened and said. I don't really know, Hinata. I never really got to meet him before. Have you thought of asking him? Hinata sighed and said, yes, but I don't want to hurt his feelings by asking. Kurenai said, well, that's a choice you're going to have to make if you want to know. I hate to say it, Hinata, but both Anko and I have stuff we have to do tonight, so we will see you next Saturday, okay? Hinata nods and watches them leave, and she turns and walks toward where Naruto was after picking up her latest gift, and she soon found Naruto standing in front of a door she never used before, and he said, I have one more surprise for you, as he opened the door and stepped in. Hinata walked in after him and found the room was bare except for some kind of seal on the floor, and Naruto walked to the middle and said, just channel chakra to the seal. It will do the rest. And the seal glowed a moment and Naruto was gone the next. Hinata blinked and stepped on the seal and did as he told her, and the next minute she saw she was in another room just like the other, but it seemed smaller, and Naruto was standing by the door and he said, come on, hurry up, as he waved for the door. Hinata frowned and walked to the door and opened it and gasped as she saw a beautiful garden full of different flowers, and Naruto said, this is one of the 6 pillars around the temple. This is the bottom floor. These are just regular flowers here. The second floor has all the vegetables and the third floor has medical herbs. The fourth floor I haven't had a chance to do yet, or the other 2 floors of this tower. Each floor has one of these seal rooms that take you back to the room we started in, but that seal in that room only brings you to this floor. That way, if the kids ever come here, they can play in this garden without destroying the vegetable or medical gardens. I brought you here because I told you it is easier to feel the force when surrounded by life, so you can meditate in here when you want to get a stronger connection. I am going to. He was stopped when she grabbed him and kissed his lips, shocking him, and she said, thank you. It's beautiful. Naruto was shocked and he said, no problem. After his mind caught up. Hinata blushed and looked away, and Naruto said, go ahead and look around. We can go whenever you are ready. Hinata nods and began walking around smelling the flowers. Naruto watched her and he felt happiness. Kushina was meditating and frowned as she had a vision and thought, be strong, my son. For the next week Hinata trained, meditated, sparring with Naruto in taijutsu as well as beginning to learn kenjutsu, because Naruto had her start carving a vibrosword and she enjoyed her time there because her and Naruto had been spending more time together and he was opening up around her. Kakashi had came by, and after about an hour Naruto had learned the Kage Bunshin, and Kakashi was surprised to see nearly 200 Naruto. Hinata and Kakashi then got a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see 100 Jedi and 100 Sith battle each other in a full-out lightsaber match. When it was over, Naruto was panting and sweating and fell back passed out. Finally, the day they had to start class again arrived, and Naruto had on a pair of black pants and a white shirt that was open halfway down showing his chest, and a black cloak open showing the shirt underneath. Hinata was now wearing the Ichani armor, which was designed like clothing that molded to her frame, and her purple cloak opened as well showing the armor clothing. She also had on a pair of wrist and ankle weights that Naruto had gotten for her from Tenten shop, and he had asked about his order. Flashback. Naruto was gaping and said, what do you mean it's not here? You put it up. Tenten said. I know. I don't understand it either. A voice said. Understand what, dear? As a man walked out of the back. Tenten said. Dad, this is Naruto Namikaze. He came by and wanted 2 weapons customized with wooden handle and a life seal on them, but now they're gone. Dustin frowned and said. Did you give him a receipt ticket? Naruto pulled out the ticket and thought. Dad's document duplication jutsu comes in handy. And Dustin frowned and said, that's strange. A brown hair man came in a few days ago with the same ticket and said he was canceling the order. Naruto said, well, it wasn't me, and now what are we going to do about it? Dustin said, well, I can replace the weapon. Just tell me what it looked like and I will make you a new one. Naruto said, it's not that easy. I made them myself and they were prototype chakra-based weapons for my future clan. They were like this. As he activated his blue lightsaber and said, but the blades were not blue but hot pink because I was going to give them to Hinata as a birthday present since she joined my clan. He then shut off his lightsaber and said, but the problem is I don't want anyone else learning how they are used, and now the fact that someone has taken them is a huge blow to my pride, so how exactly are you going to replace that? Huh. As he was looking at Dustin. Dustin was sweating and thought, shit, what can I do? I mean, if word goes around about me losing someone's personal weapon like this, it would ruin my business. Tenten said, well, The only thing we can do is tell the Hokage so he can have Anbu keep an eye out for them. It won't be hard to identify two hot pink chakra-bladed weapons. Naruto sighed and said, I suppose I have no choice in the matter. I trust that since this mistake was made on your end that you will put up a bounty for their return. Dustin's sweat dropped and said, yeah, that will work, but can I ask that you not tell anyone about this? It could ruin my business. Naruto frowned and then looked at Tenten and said, on one condition. Saturdays I want her to come over and spar with both me and Hinata in Kenjutsu until they are recovered. If so, I will keep my mouth shut about your shop. Agreed. Before Tenten could say anything, Dustin said, agreed. She can start in 2 weeks. We have a lot of deliveries this weekend, so I need her. Is that acceptable? Naruto sighed and nods and said, alright, but if she doesn't come by every Saturday after that, I will post flyer around town about what has happened. I don't want to hurt your business. I just want my weapons back. Dustin said, I understand and I apologize and will start working on a better way to make sure this never happens again. Naruto said, fine, but I want a copy of the official report you file with the Hokage when Tenten comes for her sparring so I know that you did file it. Dustin said, of course. Again, I am sorry. Naruto nods and walks out and thought, perfect. End flashback. Naruto and Hinata walked toward the academy ignoring the looks people were sending them, and Hinata asked, why are they staring at us? Naruto motioned with his head and they both ran up the side of a building to the roof, and Naruto quickly created 2 Kujibunshin and one hanged into the old Hinata, who put her fingers together and stuttered, I am sorry, forgive me for asking. The new Hinata looked at her and said, what the hell's your problem? Then both went up in smoke and Naruto said, they're just surprised to see the new you. Hinata punched him in the arm and Naruto said, see. That's what I was talking about. She jumped off the roof onto the ground and Naruto did the same as they walked the rest of the way to class. When they got there, several kids were whispering and pointing toward Hinata, who started to move her hands together, and Naruto said, Don't hide the real you again, Lady Hinata. Show the world you're not that little girl who was always had a confidence problem. Hinata glared at him and he smiled, and Kiba walked up and whistled as he looked at Hinata and said, damn dude, how Hinata gets so hot. Naruto said, she's always been that way and please don't treat her like a trophy, Kiba. Hinata much too good for it. Hinata blushed at Naruto's words and Kiba said while acting like a stuck-up gentleman with a bad accent as he bowed, my apologies, Ms. Hyuga. Might I have the pleasure of your company and to escort you inside? Hinata growled and she grabbed Naruto's hand and said, I am not a Hyuga. I am Lady Hinata of the Namikaze clan, and that honor is only for Naruto-kun, as she began to drag him inside. Naruto blinked and thought, what the hell just happened? Hinata dragged him into an empty classroom and slammed the door and shook her fist in anger as she did a muffled scream, and Naruto was shocked seeing her like this and asked, what's wrong, Hinata? Hinata said, that asshole. I can't believe he just did that. I am going to kill him. Naruto was confused and asked, what are you talking about? What did he do? Hinata turned toward Naruto and screeched, what did he do? What did he do? I will tell you what he did. As she shut up and Naruto looked confused and she said, look, just forget it. Naruto said, no, not until you tell me what's going on. Why are you so pissed off all of a sudden? Hinata tried to leave but Naruto blocked her and she sighed after several attempts and said, when he asked me for the pleasure of my company, that means he was asking me to be my suitor or his girlfriend. It's one of the things that was drilled into my head when I was younger. Not to mention he was eyeing me like a piece of steak. I don't like him looking at me like that. Naruto asked, and the whole declaration thing. What was that about? Hinata blushed and said, that was me telling him I am not a Hyuga and that I am taken. Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, I thought you still had a month and a half to decide. I thought you still hated me. Hinata sighed and said, I do. I did. I don't know. This whole mess is screwed up and I don't know what to think. I guess it's just that I am starting to hate you less for what happened the more I think about it. I just don't know what to think. Naruto said, fair enough, and like I said, you still have time to decide. I think we should go to class before we are late. As he opened the door and they both walked out. A few minutes later they were both in the back of the class when Iruka and Mizuki walked in and Iruka said, Ah, Naruto and Hinata, nice of you both to join us again. I hope the clan issues have been taken care of. Naruto said. They were enlightening. Iruka nods and said, well, today we are having taijutsu lesson, so everyone outside please. Naruto went out with his class and he felt a pair of eyes on him and he glanced around and saw Hiashi standing barely in the woods and he said, Iruka sensei, sign Sasuke not here who is currently has the number 1 spot in taijutsu. Iruka said, that would be Kiba, why? Naruto said, I think Kiba should have a match against Hinata. Everyone went wide-eyed and Iruka asked, why? Naruto said, I think you might be surprised. Hinata looked at Naruto and asked, are you sure, Naruto? Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a scroll and out popped a blindfold and Naruto said, put it on. Hinata sighed and put it on and Naruto said in a low voice to her as everyone was watching them, your eyes can deceive you, Hinata. You have learned a lot these 2 weeks. Use what you have learned. As he waved his hand and all 4 weights Hinata had fell off onto the ground. Iruka said, I am not letting her fight blindfolded Naruto. She will get hurt. Naruto said, no she won't. If she does I will quit being a ninja. Everyone's eyes went wide at this including Hinata who thought, does he have so much faith in me? I must prove him right. Mizuki thought, this is perfect. The demon brat will be gone soon. And said, I think you should do it since he is wagering his future on her Iruka. This is a valuable lesson to learn. Iruka sighed and said, you both know the rules. You may begin. Kiba said, man Naruto, I can't believe you are really throwing your career away on her but it's your funeral. As he got ready. Hinata took a stance and everyone but Hiashi and Naruto looked confused and Hiashi thought, that's not a Hyuga stance. Just what are you pulling? Kiba shrugged and he charged toward Hinata who began to weave away from each and every one of Kiba attack mere seconds before they hit and Naruto smiled as everyone was shocked. Naruto said, come on Hinata. Feel the force surround you, let it surround you, bind you, and then act. Hinata concentrated and as Kiba went for a punch to her stomach she slapped the punch away to the side, stepped in and delivered an uppercut to Kiba jaw sending him into the air but she then did a standing backflip and her feet hit him in the back sending him high into the air and she flipped back forward and put her fist together before she threw them straight up into the falling Kiba's stomach making him cough as the air was pushed out of his lunges. She then stepped back as she swung her hand forward and he fell to the ground hard. Iruka walked over and saw that even though Kiba was awake he could not continue and he said, winner, Hinata. People began to cheer and Naruto walked forward and said, good job Hinata. I'm proud of you. Hinata smiled and thought, I did it. Over the next week Hinata began moving up from the lower half of class toward the front of the class in ranking. Naruto himself was staying about middle of the class and when Hinata asked why he was hiding he said, a ninja does not show how good he actually is. Hinata after that began to move back a little toward the middle of class and stayed about where Naruto was. Mizuki was not having a good week. On Monday the desk next to Naruto fell and broke his toe as it was under the desk. On Tuesday he slipped on some urine from Akamaru who started to laugh for some reason and pissed in the floor and Mizuki broke his arm trying to catch his fall. On Wednesday the flagpole fell on him breaking his shoulder bone. On Thursday he was still in the hospital and on Friday when he got out his girlfriend broke up with him after she saw him flirting with some blonde hair girl she never seen before even though he was still in the hospital when this happened. When Saturday rolled around Tenten came over to spar with Naruto and Hinata and Kurenai came by but Anko was away on a mission. Sunday was just basic with learning exercise number 9. Hinata would not get to number 10 until she could do the waterfall exercise in the time limit. Then Monday popped up and today Sasuke was back after his suspension. When Naruto and Hinata arrived Sasuke ignored them and Naruto said, weird. Hinata nods and they both sat down. As the rest of the kids come in Sakura, Ino and a few other fangirls all started trying to ask Sasuke out and other things and Naruto watched them and Hinata asked, what are you thinking Naruto? Naruto asked, if Sasuke gay and why is an Anbu hanged into a female student? Hinata blinked and asked, what? Naruto said, the second brown hair girl on the left of Sasuke in the middle. She's a he and has an Anbu mask on. Hinata activated her bloodline and gasped and asked, why he here? Naruto frowned and said, I guess the Hokage wants to keep an eye on Sasuke for now and make sure he doesn't try to kill anyone else. Hinata nods and she didn't realize it, but she scooted closer to Naruto and grabbed his hand, and Naruto blinked and glanced at her as she watched them and thought, so some of the old you is still there. I guess until you can bury him he will always be a bad memory for you, but he still serves a purpose. Besides that, nothing of importance happened. Hiba, Shikamaru, Choji, Naruto and Hinata spent lunch together every day and stayed good friends, but the three boys never got closer than that. Naruto and Shikamaru played games, Choji ate, Hinata watched and Kiba joked. It was stress relief to relieve boredom mostly. In the morning before school, Hinata did the first two exercises and Naruto had changed the dodge exercise to dodge and attack now. Then school. Then after school they would go back and train until around 7 when they ate and relaxed until they went to sleep or meditated. Saturday, Tenten, Kurenai, and Anko all came over, but Tenten only stayed for an hour since she still had work to do. Hinata had improved greatly during this time and Naruto was happy with her improvement. Today was the day of reckoning though. Today was the 2-month date he had agreed on and it was also Hinata's 12th birthday. Naruto smiled as he saw her working out and he saw that the people he had asked to come had arrived, so he went toward the gate and said, "Thank you all for coming today." As he opened the gate, Hiyashi Hyuga, Hanabi Hyuga, Kurenai and Anko all arrived and Naruto said, "Please follow me," as he led them inside. Hinata was just finishing the dodge and attack exercise and Naruto waved his hand and a block moved and the area started to change and Naruto said, "Hinata, that's all for now. I have an announcement I would like for you to hear." Hinata walked over shocked to see who was there and Naruto said, "In case you have not realized it, Hinata, it has been exactly 2 months since you first came here. In that 2 months you have improved greatly in not just physical strength but mental and spiritual as well. You have become the diamond I knew you could. Today is also your birthday. I figured it's kind of fitting that today would be the day you would make the most important choice of your life. I had intended to give you a present marking your accomplishments here, but someone stole them from the shop. They were being customized, so I have decided to do something else." As he held his hand above his head and several tiles in the roof began to move, shocking everyone, and several puffs of smoke went off around the room, and when it was done there were 20 rows of racks all throughout the hall and Naruto pulled out his lightsaber and ignited it and said, "Hinata, you have seen me use this weapon on several occasions. I have told you the history of these weapons and how important they are to me and my future clan. I have decided that even if you do not join my clan, that you still earn the right to at least one of these weapons," shocking everyone. Naruto said, "Now Hinata, on each of these shelves are the pieces that make up the lightsabers. There are millions of possibilities here, and if you notice there is a single pillar alone at the end of the shelf that goes 40 feet into the air. I want you to go down each row and don't choose the ones you think are nice or good or whatever. I want you to feel which pieces are calling you. I don't care if it's a single, double or 2 of them. Search out the pieces for your lightsaber and then climb the pillar, and on top of it you will find the instruction on how to combine them properly. Follow the directions and then when you are done activate them for all of us to see. That is my birthday present and my gift, showing that in my eyes you are now an adult, free to make any choice you wish." Hinata was shocked and Hiyashi asked, "What are you playing at, Naruto?" Naruto waited until Hinata was searching the rows and he said, "She knows the truth, Hiyashi. She knows about how in order to stop Sasuke feud with the Hyuga clan I paid your clan a chest of rubies and how I was the one who framed her so you could kick her out. She's known since the second day here. I asked her to give me the 2 months that we agreed on, Hiyashi, to let her learn to become stronger for herself so she can make her own decision. Not the ones her clan makes for her or the ones I make for her, but what will make her happy. I have given her every tool that I could while she was here. I have given her support, guidance, inspiration, compassion, understanding, and kindness. I have showed her that just because she was a woman she was not weak. I showed her that just because others say things about her does not make them true. I have done nothing to her but opened her eyes to the world and allowed the real Hinata that has hidden herself away her entire life to come out of hiding. Now today is the day she will make her choice. She will either return to the Hyuga clan as a proud Hyuga, stay here with me with the knowledge of my plans for the future and the way I am. She can take Kurenai, offer to move in with her and become like a daughter to her, or she can tell us all to go screw ourselves and start her own life. You free now, Kurenai, so you can hit me if you wish. It won't matter because it's all her choice now. As he looked back at the red-eyed woman who has been trying to open her mouth as well as move to punch Naruto after hearing him say it was his fault she was kicked out, and she heard it all and asked, barely holding her temper, why? Naruto saw Hinata had done finished and was standing on the pillar and said, look at her now and you will understand. Before all this went down she was a lump of coal in every sense of the word. She was hidden in the ground, alone in her own darkness, feeling lots of pressure from everywhere, but she was lacking the spark of heat in her life that would turn her into what she is now. A diamond that just needs to be refined, and she will be ready for whatever the world throws at her. Kurenai looked at Hinata, who slipped the pieces together, and she said, I am finished. Naruto said, good, now be careful and activate it, Hinata, and show everyone your light. Hinata nods and she activated the lightsaber, and Naruto's eyes went wide as Hinata had a double-bladed lightsaber with green blades, and he smiled and said, well done, Lady Hinata, well done. Now come join us so we can celebrate your birthday. As several Kujubunshin walked out with tables, food, and drinks. Naruto raised his hand and more tiles moved in the roof and all the rows of lightsaber parts went up in smoke, and Anko asked, aren't you afraid someone might find those and steal them? Naruto said, nope, I have set up decoy bricks in the ceiling, and if any one of the parts is not from the right shelf when they go to activate it, the lightsaber will explode and kill everyone within 10 feet of it. Hiyashi asked, how do you have so many gems? Naruto smirked and said, let's just say you would never believe what is buried under this village or this temple. Hiyashi narrowed his eyes and said, so there's more to it underground. Naruto said, yeep, thought I can't take credit for them. My parents originally built that part as a civilian shelter, but because of the way the villagers treated me as a child, my mother and I say the villagers can go themselves. I will defend Konoha because it's my home and the home my father gave his life for, and for the ones who see me as me. Those like Mizuki and the ones who don't just get off lucky. Hinata frowned at this but remained quiet as she ate. The rest of the lunch was mostly a few comments here and there, Hanabi saying happy birthday to her sister, and then Naruto said, well, Hinata, do you have that scroll? Hinata nods and pulls out the scroll and lighter, and Naruto said, that scroll contains the contract I made with Hinata. It's basically the same one I made with the Hyuga clan with a few minor changes like no jewels and things like that. She's allowed to make her own decisions, so do what is best for you, not for me, not for Kurenai, and not for your family. Hinata closed her eyes and said, can I speak to my father and sister a few minutes alone before I decide? Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, it's your decision, Hinata, you can do whatever you want. As he turned and walked away. Hiyashi watched as Kurenai and Anko followed after Naruto, and Hinata looked at them and said, did you know about this, Hanabi? I mean about my being kicked out of the clan alive. Hanabi looked extremely confused, and Hiyashi said, no. No one besides myself, the council, and Naruto knew of this. She only knew what everyone else knew. Hinata nods and looked at her father with a heavy glare and asked, why? Why did you agree to it? Hiyashi sighed and said, I did what was best for the clan. Naruto explained how Sasuke attacks on everyone, especially you made it look like it was the rivalry between the Hyuga clan and the Uchiha clan. We did it be. Hinata slapped him across the face and screamed, I don't want to know why Hiyashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan, did it, that I know. I want to know why my father agreed to it. Hiyashi was shocked and Hanabi was gaping, and he said, I. Hinata asked, you what? Hiyashi regained his composure and said, after your attack and we were at the hospital after Sasuke sent his threat that if I agreed with Naruto idea then you and your sister would finally be safe. I knew no matter what I did that one of you would have suffered in the branch house. That is why I made you feel weak and inferior after your mother's death, so that way there was a chance that the current council would pass away while we tried to determine who should be the heir. Hinata asked, and if I returned to the Hyuga clan, what would happen to Hanabi and I? Hiyashi said, even though you have gotten stronger, the fact that you now use non-traditional Hyuga techniques means you would be branded with the seal. Hinata frowned and Hanabi looked at her sister, and Hinata said, may I speak with my sister alone a moment? Hiyashi nods and walked away, and Hinata said, Hanabi, you understand what is going on here, right? Hanabi said, a little. Hinata looked at her sister and had a flashback of when she first came here, and Naruto words rang in her head, and she said, I want you to do something for me, sister. I am going to become someone you are going to be proud of. I want you to watch me, and when you become the head of the Hyuga clan, I want you to use me as your guide and change the Hyuga clan so that way our family will no longer suffer because of the seal and what others think. I may be mad about the fact Naruto got me kicked out of my family, but he freed me from slavery. I owe him and I will stand by his side. He is a great person. Watch me, sister, and become a diamond like me. As she hugged her sister and a tear fell from her eyes. Hanabi was confused but understood enough of it and said, I will, sister. Hinata nods and stood back up and said, come, sister, I have an announcement to make. As she walked toward where the three groups were waiting. When they all got back together, Hinata said, I have decided that I am going to stay here with Naruto. Naruto looked at her and asked, are you sure? I mean, you know that I will never be able to marry you, and someday I will want you to become the mother of my children. Are you sure about this? I don't want you to feel you owe me or anything. I want it to be your choice. Hinata said, I know, but I realize that no matter what, my life as a Hyuga is over. I can't ever go back unless I want to become a servant in the branch family. I also know that Kurenai offered me a chance to be with her, but I won't be a burden to anyone ever again. I learned my lesson, and that was that I have to take care of myself in this world. I decided to stay with you because the fact you went out of your way to help me when no one else would. I suffered not only at the hands of Sasuke but from the Hyuga clan. You freed me and in the process freed my sister. You have shown me nothing but kindness besides the actual deed that caused me to be kicked out. You have showed me you care for me, and I have decided I will help you as I help myself. Naruto smiled and saw everyone looking at Hinata, and he said, I know that for you and Anko, Kurenai, that is shocking to learn, and I ask that you both don't tell anyone about the truth why Hinata was removed from the Hyuga clan. If you both hadn't have become so attached to her, I would not have let you been here, but since this was her future, I decided that you should know why today is so important. Do you have anything you wish to say, Hiyashi-san? Hiyashi looked at Hinata and said, just that I am proud of you and I am sorry for what I did, but I have my duties to the Hyuga clan. Hinata narrowed her eyes and said, I see. Well, today has been very tiring for me and I have a busy day of training tomorrow. I am sorry, but I must get some rest. Thank you all for coming today, and may the force be with you. As she turned and Naruto saw the look on her face and frowned inside, and he saw everyone looked uncomfortable, and he said, I wish to thank you all for coming, and like Hinata said, we have a long day tomorrow. Hiyashi nods and said, come Hanabi, we shall retire for the evening. As he turned and grabbed her hand as they left. As he was leaving, Anko asked, what are you playing at Gaki? Naruto said, I just want to see Hinata happy. Is that so hard to believe? Anko glared at him, and Kurenai said, you have better take care of her, and if I ever hear of you hurting her, I will kill you. Naruto said, I won't, but I hope you will still come see her. I know she's grown to look at you like a second mother. Kurenai closes her eyes and said, I will. As she wanted to bite his head off but knew she couldn't right now, and she grabbed Anko's arm and they left. Naruto waited until they were gone, and he locked the gate and went back into the temple and went to find Hinata. He found her inside the flower garden, and he walked up to her and wrapped his arms around her, and she flinched, and Naruto said, go ahead and let it go, Hinata. It's just you and me, and we don't hide things from each other. Hinata began to cry and wail as she turned into his hold and put her head on his chest as she cried. Naruto sat there rubbing her back, and about 10 minutes later, when she began to hiccup from crying, he asked, do you want to talk about it? Hinata looked up at him and saw kindness in his eyes, and she whipped the tears from her eyes and said, I hate my father. He cares more about the clan than he does me. He actually had me believe he cared, but I could tell if it came to me or the clan, I would always lose to him. I hate him. Naruto rubbed her back and said, Hinata, do you love me? Hinata blinked and asked, what? Naruto asked, do you love me? Hinata looked down a moment and she said, yes. Naruto put his finger under her chin where they were looking at each other, and he said, I also love you. I know that I have said that I will make it where none of the women I have mother my children would be different, but you are special to me. I don't know how, but you have taken my heart. I have so many secrets I have to keep, and yet I want to tell them all to you. No matter what, Hinata, I can honestly say that any other woman that I have in my future, no matter what I say, will be nothing but the mother of my children. To me you will be more. If I could have one that would be my wife, it would be you. That is, if you would have me. Hinata was shocked and asked, what are you asking me? Naruto said, To the rest of the world you will be no different than the other woman I will choose to be the mother of my children, and though I will have with them and will tell them I care for them, you will be the only one I will truly love with my heart. Behind closed doors, when it's just you and me, I will hold nothing back and you will know everything and you will hide nothing from me. What I am asking is if you will share my secrets and keep them from everyone and aid me in life. Help me when there are things I can't do alone and stand by my side no matter what I must do. Hinata looked into his eyes and said, "Yes, Naruto-kun. I will." Naruto nods and said, "You remember how I told you about my mother coming here?" Hinata nodded and Naruto said, "Shortly after you came here to live with me, a man bumped into me and called me a youngling. I was shocked and then I realized he had stolen my lightsabers and I chased after him. When I found him I learned he is a Jedi who along with some others came here looking for my mother. They will be coming here soon because Mom had me tell him to bring the leaders with him of the group and we would explain everything. They don't know it, but when Mom found the enemy that she was wanting to protect the Republic, for she had delayed their plans by doing the same thing that was done at Malachor 5, and that was trap the enemy's ships in the gravity of the planet and have them crash into the planet. She destroyed, she thinks, around 400 ships by doing that, but when she escaped she was on her way to the Republic to warn them. An enemy ship followed her through hyperspace, which is like a shushan for ships, and when they arrived here where she would have to change course to make the next jump to hyperspace, the ship attacked hers, which caused her to crash so they would know that she could not alert the Republic. It then left back to where the others were to help recover. It takes a month in hyperspace to get from their planet to this one and another month to get from this planet to the farthest planet in the Republic." Hinata was absorbing all of this and Naruto said, "Mom had suspected something because of how long it would take to get from one place to another, and then after I was born and the Kyuubi was sealed inside of me, she made a comment to the fox and she learned that her fear was true." Hinata saw Naruto was silent and asked, "What was her fear? What is it?" Naruto said, "During wars an enemy will sometimes make a checkpoint where they can get supplies and regroup. Mom found out that Kyuubi and the other tailed demons had a second mission besides stopping the natural disasters on this planet. They were also to protect the planet population that the enemy that Mom calls the ancients brought here as slaves from other people gaining control of this planet, and when the ancients returned they were to help them quickly cripple any armies here by attacking the villages so they could be quickly turned into slaves so they could make this planet a checkpoint. Mom found out that there is a factory buried underground on an island here that would allow them to make any parts for their ships and armor for weapons. It's like the Star Forge I told you about but smaller. The ancients are going to come here and take over this planet, turning us all into slaves and breeding stock. Once she found this out and found out Kyuubi was going to try and influence me to where I can be used by the ancients, Mom killed him. I now have all his power but that I am absorbing over time, but the fox itself is dead." Hinata was shocked and said, "But what can we do?" in a scared voice. Naruto said, "Mom and I planned for me to use the Force and other things and manipulate the people of this world like she did as the Lord of the Sith and become the ruler of this world. I then plan to use the factory and build weapons and other things to allow us to defend this world. If we can stop the ancients here, even if it cost us all our lives, then the hundreds of billions in the Republic will be safe. The ancients need this world or all their plans are ruined. Mom's told me a few ideas she had to stop them, like shields for the planet and other things, and if I can do it quickly I can hopefully save the people here, but the problem is I am going to have to use people, kill people, trick people, and be cruel to some people so I can make my empire. I know that a lot will die and some people are going to hate me for what I have to do, but if my plan works then a lot more will live. To some I will be a monster, a murderer, but I can live with that choice if I can save everyone." Hinata asked, "Why don't you tell people?" Naruto said, "Think about it, Hinata. Did you believe me when I told you my mom was not from this planet? People already fear me because of Kyuubi. If I tell them the truth they will think I am crazy and either try and kill me or lock me away, and by the time they learn the truth it will be too late." Hinata looked down and asked, "Then why do you plan for our children? If they are born then they will be slaves if we fail or killed." "I don't understand." Naruto said, "Mom hurt them when she faced them. She set them back by years. I don't know when they will come. It may not even be in my life, and the more time I have to set things up the less people will die. Mom had me draw blueprints up for a lot of things and has been teaching me about machines and droids and other things. If I can get my empire set up and then get the things she had me make plans for, then if we can get them built and running before they arrive, then they might not even be able to get to the planet. If that happens, then our children would all be safe. Mom, and I hope that if we can get the ones who came here to find her to help us, we might be able to do it quicker with less loss of life. If the ancients don't get this world, then the Republic will have more and more time to get ready and possible set up some kind of trap to stop them. The problem is we don't know how far back Mom set their plans, so they can be here anytime from now to 1,000 years from now. From what Mom told me and what we know about Kyuubi, the guys in charge can't die of old age. Hinata thought about it and said, "So you're willing to sacrifice some to save all, just like your mother?" Naruto said, "Yeah, that's why I took a Sith name and have started to call myself Darth Razan. I have already started preparing. I gave Kakashi a gift that was a pair of sunglasses that were actually made of the material that the visors for the armored helmets I plan to use to test and see if bloodlines can still work with them, and so far they appear to work right." Hinata asked, "Then why didn't you have me try?" "I mean, I do have a bloodline." Naruto said, "I didn't want to use you. Even thought you might think I did with the armor you wear. It's not. That is something specific for my family I want. The armor I plan to use later is totally different." Hinata asked, "This factory you plan to use, do you know where it is?" Naruto said, "Yeah, each of the Biju know where it is since they have to guard it. Mom forced Kyuubi to tell her before she killed him. It will be a little hard to get to for me, and for someone who does not know how to use the force it will be impossible." Hinata looked at him and asked, "Do you plan to use me?" Naruto said, "No, I don't plan to use you. If I did, I would never have told you what I have. I just want someone to know. Hopefully understand me." As he closed his eyes, Hinata looked at him and asked, "Is that why you have nightmares?" Naruto looked at her and finally said, "No, from the day I was born until I was 4 years old, I was treated like I was a demon in human form. People would beat me, starve me, try to kill me. From my memories, Mom counted, I was in the hospital over 800 times. The people who were supposed to take care of me would wait until the Hokage left and either let other hurt me or they did it themselves. Most of the council either wanted me dead or turned into a human weapon. Then when Mom finally was able to return to me, I came here before this temple was built, and the Sandyame tried everything he could to get me out so he could deny who I really was. I lived basically alone, always training and working here to build this place, and then when I finally had to go ask for food and supplies when I was almost out, the Sandyame had tried to arrest me with Anbu. Luckily I had already trained in my mind and body learning to use the force, and I was able to beat them. Then I nearly had to fight the Hokage himself, but we came to a small agreement after I threatened to take my father's jutsu and go to another village. After that day I did not step outside the gates here for several years. The Sandaime or Kakashi would come by a week before my birthday to get a list of what I needed for the year, and then on my birthday they would bring my supplies in storage scrolls to me. Even then he denied who I was until he let it slip after the Uchiha massacre, as he laid back onto the ground. Hinata looked at him and said, "So that's why you have nightmares?" Naruto nods and Hinata said, "I think I understand, you know, Darth Razan, but to me you will always be Naruto-kun. No matter what you do, I will be by your side." Naruto smiled as he sat up and asked, "Do you mean it?" Hinata nods and he leans forward and said, "I love you, Lady Hinata." Hinata said, "And I, you, my lord," as she pressed her lips into his and they shared a true kiss. After several moments they pulled back and Naruto said, "Come," as he stood up as he offered her his hand. Hinata stood up and Naruto held her hand as they made their way back to the temple. When they got back, Naruto walked her to where the hall divided to go to each of their rooms, and he said, "Good night, my lady." As he kissed her again and turned to leave, and Hinata held onto his hand and he stopped when she wouldn't let go, and he was about to say something when she said, "I told you I will be by your side. I know we are too young to do anything, which I am glad because I am not ready for that, but I also know I will have to share you soon so you can have your family you want to rule our empire. I want to have you alone for myself for now, just to be by you." Naruto was shocked and he asked, "Are you sure? I mean?" Hinata said, "Yes, I am sure. Let me get my night cloths and I will join you." Naruto nods and he watched her leave toward her room to get ready for bed, and he thought, "Mom, what's going on?" Kushina smiled and said, She loves you, son. Don't worry about it. It happens. Enjoy. Naruto nods and Kushina sighed and thought. Be there for him, Hinata. I fear dark times are coming and only he will be able to do what is necessary. Naruto walks into his room and get his night shirt and a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and when he walked out he found Hinata was already there in his bed, and he walked over and saw she had a pair of night pants and a long shirt. He crawled into bed and laid down, and Hinata laid down on his shoulder and said, "Good night," as she closed her eyes and fell asleep shortly after. Naruto, who was still shocked, closed his eyes listening to her breathing and soon fell asleep. The next morning when Naruto awoke he stretched and found he was alone, and he got out of bed and thought, man, that was a great night's sleep. As he got ready for the day he found Hinata already doing her morning exercises, and he smiled and said, "How are you today, Hinata?" Hinata said, "Fine, master." Naruto sighed and thought, "I can't wait until she finishes training," and said, "We have school today, so are you ready?" Hinata nods, and after a few minutes of gathering last-minute items they left. On the way to the academy Hinata asked, "So what's your plan, Naruto-kun?" Naruto frowned and said, "For now I don't know. I need to wait until I see what the people who came for mom do to decide." Hinata nods and they got to the academy, and Naruto said, "After school today I want to begin teaching you how to use your lightsaber effectively." The day at the academy was as usual. Lectures, lectures, and then some physical activity like sparring, kunai and shuriken throwing, and laps. When they got home that evening they started lightsaber practice. The next week went by like this, and Naruto sighed as he got out of bed and he blinked and he found Hinata still in bed with him, and he thought, wait, if she's here then who's in the main hall? As he got up and got dressed and woke Hinata up and said, "Someone's here, go get dressed and meet me in the main hall." Hinata nods and she quickly left to get dressed for the day. Naruto dressed in his black cloak and he walked into the main hall and he looked around and asked, "How did you get in here, Ramsey, and where are the others?" Ramsey said, "They've been called back to the Republic. Things are heating up, so they left me the Ebon Hawk and went back with the Mandalorians to deal with some remnants of the Sith that have been attacking some of the outlining worlds." Naruto sighed and said, "Great. We need the others here. Do they know where this planet is and how soon can they get back?" Hinata walked in and Ramsey looked at her and raised an eyebrow, and Naruto said, "This is Hinata, my apprentice." Ramsey frowned and said, "I see. Yes, the others know where this planet is and they are going to wait on me in Revan." "Where is Revan?" Naruto sighed and he heard his mother and said, "If you wish to speak with her you need to put me in forced sleep." Ramsey was confused and Hinata said, "It's true. She can only appear when he's asleep." Ramsey sighed and said, "Fine, but this better work." Naruto sat down in a meditation stance and Ramsey placed his hand on Naruto's head and Naruto soon passed out and Ramsey stepped back and the form of Revan slowly appeared and Ramsey said, "Revan, is that you?" Revan said, "Yes. I can't talk long so I have to be quick. I can't leave here. My son needs me here and we need help." Ramsey asked, "What happened to you?" Revan said, "I was dying due to childbirth, and because my husband was about to do something that would have put our son's life at risk, I used an ancient technique I learned while looking for the Star Forge to bound myself through the Force to my son." Ramsey frowned and said, "In other words, you're consuming his life force to stay alive." "I fought a Sith Lord who did the same thing. It's a technique born of the dark side of the Force, Revan. Why would you use such a technique on your own son?" Revan said, "Don't go preaching to me about the dark side of the Force. I know the truth about the Force, Ramsey. There is no light side or dark side but the Force itself. It's what we do with it that defines which we are aligned to." Ramsey said, "All this time we were searching for you because we never felt you die in the Force, only to find out that you did die and now you're killing your son." Revan said, "No, I am not. There are things you don't understand. There is dangers coming to the Republic that will cost the Republic to fall. This world needs our help or it will cost us all." Ramsey frowned and then said, "Revan, I don't know what you believe, but I can see how your influence is twisting your son as well as killing him. You're no better than your former master and Sith Lord Kreia. I won't allow you to continue to manipulate him, creating more death and violence, Revan." Revan got a scared look on her face and said, "You can't. My son needs me. There are things you don't understand. Please listen to me." Ramsey said, "I am tired of listening to fallen Jedi and Sith Lords. I don't know how you can think that you're doing the right thing, but you're wrong. I am sorry, Revan, but it's time for you to pass on. As he walked toward Naruto, Revan went and sent a force push toward Ramsey, who used one of his own, and as he started getting closer and closer to Naruto, Revan's body began to disappear and she looked at Hinata and said, "Protect my son, please." As she disappeared, Hinata acted quickly and activated her lightsaber and got in front of Naruto's body and said, "I won't let you get near him." Ramsey said, "Don't make me fight you, little girl. You can't beat me. I am going to break her connection to him and save his life." Hinata said, "No, you're not. I won't let you." As she took a swing at him and he sent her flying into the wall with a force push. Hinata groaned and Naruto's eyes flashed open and sent a force push toward Ramsey, sending him flying back. Naruto jumped to his feet and activated his lightsaber and said, "You not getting near my mother." Ramsey got up and activated his lightsaber and said, "She's using you, boy." Naruto said, "No, she's saving me." Ramsey said, "You can't defeat me, boy. I have more experience fighting, better fighter than you can imagine. Surrender and I won't hurt you or the girl, but I am going to stop Revan. She's become an abomination in the Force." Naruto said, "Takes one to know one." Ramsey said, "I see she's twisted your mind. You have fallen to the dark side of the Force." Naruto, who had put himself between Ramsey and Hinata, who was standing ready to fight, said, "There is no dark side or light. There is only one Force." Ramsey said, "She's corrupted your mind, boy. Don't make me kill you." Naruto said, "You can't. I am more powerful than you can imagine." Ramsey said, "Spoken like a true Sith Lord." Naruto shook his head and said, "Why does my mother wish to protect such ignorant fools? You wish to fight me when the true threat is coming to take us all." Ramsey said, "Have you seen this threat, or has your mother only told you about it? How do you know she's not lying to you? She's become corrupted by the dark side and she's corrupting you. There is no threat." Naruto said, "I have proof there is. It's you who are fooling yourself. The ancients are coming and will destroy us all. We don't need to fight, but I won't let you take the only family I have left. I won't suffer again because of ignorant fools." Hinata, who was behind Naruto, said, "We won't let you. You're not going to take her away." Ramsey looked at her and then at Naruto and sighed and said, "I see. There's no chance that I can redeem you, then I must eliminate you before you have a chance to cause pain and suffering. Prepare yourself." As he took a stance, Naruto thought, "Mom, are you okay?" Kushina's voice came weak and said, "Yes, son, I used most of my connection to the Force to speak with him. Focus or you will die. I can't help you Anym," as her voice faded away from his mind. Naruto thought, Mom, Mom, Mom. Naruto's fear for his mother began clouding his mind and he said, "You bastard. She tried to warn you about the danger coming and you try to kill her. I won't tolerate that. I will destroy you. You think you can defeat me because I am young, then you are a fool. If you refuse to even hear the truth, then I will save the people of this world from the ancients and you as well. I will bring peace and prosperity to this world, and as for the Republic, you can go yourselves. If I have to, I will embrace the darkness of the Force. You fear what I might be. You should be more afraid of what I am." As red chakra began to surround him as his eyes changed to red with gold slits. Ramsey could feel the evil radiating off of Naruto and Naruto said, "Hinata, stay back. He's too good for you." Hinata nods and Naruto then quickly created 10 Kajbunshin and each held a lightsaber, and Ramsey was wide-eyed and Naruto start to circle Ramsey with his clones, and then as one they began to attack him each with 2 lightsabers. Ramsey ducked one strike and sent a force push to one and it went up in smoke, and he back flipped over another and sliced the clone through the back as it went up in smoke as he blocked 2 strikes with his lightsaber and jumped, doing a split, hitting both, and they went up in smoke, and then he was sent flying out of the doors of the temple by a force push from Naruto. Naruto and his clones began to chase him outside, and as they battled, their speed increased, and as they reached the gates, Ramsey used the force to blow the gates open. Across the village a few minutes earlier, people began to get scared as they felt the Kyuubi chakra. The Hokage bolted to his feet and screamed, "Anbu!" 2 squads appeared and he said, "Follow me quickly to that chakra." As they all left in a shushin. Kakashi was eating breakfast with Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, and Anko when they felt the chakra, and he said, "Shit, that's Naruto." And all of them quickly headed toward the Kyuubi chakra. As people began to arrive, they saw Naruto using two lightsabers surrounded by red chakra fighting a man with a single lightsaber, and Naruto said, I won't allow you to harm her. You will have to kill me first. Ramsey said, I intend to, and if I have to, your apprentice as well. I won't allow her to continue to live. Naruto sent a kick to Ramsey's stomach and then used force push to throw him into a wall before he threw one of his lightsabers into the air and raised his hand as lightning shot out of his hand. Ramsey blocked the lightning with his lightsaber and the Hokage said, everyone get back. Naruto, seeing force lightnings not working, threw his second lightsaber into the air as he continued with one arm using lightning and used his other to take off his cloak and then changed hands, sending another bolt of lightning and shed his other side of his cloak, and he said, you have threatened not only my life but also the life of both women I love, my mother and Hinata. I will destroy you. Prepare to die. As both his lightsabers that were floating in the air got in front of Naruto began spinning to block. Ramsey saw this and thought, shit, he's just as strong as Krei. But what happened next shocked him to the core. Naruto reached both his thumbs to his mouth and bit them and then whipped them down both his sleeveless arms. Everyone was watching this, and Razmi, who had started to move to attack Naruto while he was mostly defenseless, was not prepared when seals appeared running down both arms, and suddenly 10 lightsabers handles appeared out of his arm and floated in the air as they began to circle Ramsey, who had now gotten away from the wall. Naruto closed his eyes and said, you should feel honored. This is my own original attack I created in honor of my mother and father. No one has ever seen this before, but you will not survive. I won't allow you to harm anyone I vow to protect. Not my family, not my friends, not my village, and not my world. Your life ends here. May the force be with you. Goodbye. Naruto then, to the shock of everyone, disappeared in a yellow flash, and then a lightsaber behind Ramsey activated and a blue blur was seen heading across from where it had activated, but Ramsey dodged to the left of the first strike. Then a second lightsaber activated and a purple blur shot through and Ramsey dodged just barely. Next a yellow lightsaber and then a blue lightsaber. No one could see Naruto, but they saw the brief yellow flash as the lightsaber activated and before it disappeared. As each blade activated, the one that had activated before fell to the ground, shut off, and to everyone's shock Ramsey avoided all 10 slashes just barely, and Naruto original lightsabers that had floated high into the air now began to descend as Naruto appeared where they were holding each blade as he fell from above. Ramsey, who was panting heavy by the attack, had moved his blade to block the 2 lightsabers at the last moment but only blocked one. He screamed as his left arm was cut clean off at the shoulder and used a force push to launch Naruto away as he force leapt back and then ran away as fast as he could. Naruto, who was sweating and had patches where blood was coming out of his skin, fell to his knees as he began to cough up blood, and he deactivated his blades as he fell to the ground. Hinata was there in moments and caught him as he fell, and she held him close. The third said, I want all these weapons confiscated and brought to me. Kakashi, I want you in charge of that. Do not let any of them vanish. Kakashi nods as he began to gather them and saw that there were seals he recognized as Hiraishin seals on all but Naruto main too, and he thought, you have surpassed your father Naruto. I don't know how that man survived, but even I don't think I could survive it. 3 days later. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and found himself in a white room, and he knew immediately that he was not home. He felt a weight on his hand and saw Hinata asleep in a chair beside his bed with her head on his hand, and he smiled and winced as he tried to move and found that his body had taken a lot of damage somehow. He entered his mind and saw his mother, who was partially faded, was in a forced sleep trying to recover herself, and he thought, I will not lose you, mother. I will destroy any who try to take you away from me. He walked over and kissed her head as he then left his mind, and when he blinked he saw Hinata looking at him and he smiled and asked, are you okay? Hinata smiled and dove onto his lips with hers, and they continued like this for several moments until a cough drew their attention and both broke apart, and they saw the Sandame standing there along with a white-haired man, and the third asked, how do you feel, Naruto? Naruto tried to sit up but winced and said, I hurt. It feels like when I was 4. The third frowned and said, it's not surprising. Using the Kyuubi chakra and whatever else you were doing in that battle took a heavy toll on your body. If it was not for your healing ability, then you most likely would be in the hospital for months. Naruto glanced at the white-haired man, and the third said, sorry Naruto, this is Jiraiya of the Sannin, your godfather. Naruto said, I see. The third said, what was that you were doing in that battle, Naruto? Naruto frowned and closed his eyes in thought and said, Force Rage. I lost my head in battle and started drawing too heavy on it, and Kyuubi chakra didn't help either. The third asked, why were you using Kyuubi chakra like that, Naruto? Naruto sighed and said, that man wanted to kill my mother and me. I had to defend us. Jiraiya said, how do you know how to use the fox chakra? Naruto said, Mom trained me, and during my training I met the fox, and after he insulted me and threatened everyone I care for, I destroy his mind. After that it changed my eye color and I was forced to learn how to use it since Kyuubi's not there to control it any longer. The third asked, why didn't you tell us? Naruto said, why should I? I mean, I have to basically live in total isolation just so I won't be attacked. If people are going to hate me for even being alive, why the hell should I give them a reason to kill me? The third sighed and asked, where is Kushina? I had Kurenai go with Hinata back to your temple and they couldn't find her. Naruto glanced at Hinata and she said, your mother must have left to recover after her attack, Naruto. I don't know where she went. Naruto sighed and said, I don't know then. She comes and goes so much, I wouldn't be surprised if she went after him or if she found some place to hide and heal. The third frowned and asked, why was he after her and you in the first place, and who was he? Naruto said, the abilities I was using during our fight are called the Force. I won't tell you much about it, but it allows you to draw on the spiritual energy that are around you, and if you learn to control it, you can do a lot of things. Jiraiya frowned at this and asked, that still doesn't explain why he was after you and who he was. Naruto sighed and said, my mother was trained in the use of the Force from early childhood. Those who are trained in the Force are usually called either Jedi or Sith. The Jedi try and live a life holy men is the best way to describe them, and the Sith are like cult followers. They believe the Force is divided into light and dark sides, but the Force is actually a neutral. The Jedi and Sith have a small war going with each other, believing they are the ones who are right, but since there are so few of them, you rarely see or hear of them. My mother somehow learned of both ways, and she chose to believe that the Force is neither light or dark but a neutral. She trained me to believe so as well. That man who came here was a Jedi. He wanted my mother to return to his order, and when she refused, he tried to kill her. She's been severely weakened because of nearly dying giving birth to me, so she could not fight him very well. When he went to kill her, Hinata first stopped him until I was free to fight, and then I had Hinata fall back because she nowhere near ready to fight someone like him. When he threatened Mom and her, I started drawing on Kyuubi chakra since I can use the Force nearly as well as my mother when she was in her prime. My body is not strong enough to face him. I used Kyuubi to try and give me a boost. Luckily for me, he did not expect the boost it gave me. I forced him out of there, and then the rest is history. Jiraiya asked, what about that final jutsu you used? How did it come about? Naruto frowned and said, that. It's something I am still working on. I can control 12 lightsabers, although it is mostly limited since I can only hold them in the air at one time for a few minutes, but I can't really move when I do it since it takes so much concentration. I have to have the Hiraishin seal on them do all the work while I drag the lightsaber with me. Each time I appear, I have to drop the one I am holding and grab the next one because I don't know where exactly I will appear around the lightsaber, so I only have about a second to grab and activate the blade as I pass to the next seal. I placed it on each of my lightsabers I carry with me, but it's still not perfect. He was able to use the Force to predict my line of attack and move out of the way each time. I was lucky he only had one lightsaber himself, or I would have died at the end of that attack. As he looked down, Jiraiya said, it's still impressive. I heard rumors about it already in the next village over. They call it the Dance of Lights. Naruto said, I will name it once I finish it. I wanted to make an attack like Dad's that would be impossible to defeat. Jiraiya said, still, you must be pretty good with seals. Naruto said, actually, no. I do a lot with storage seal, but all the other seals I just copied from Dad's scrolls. If I knew anything about seals, I would fix Hinata. Everyone, including Hinata, was confused about that, and Jiraiya asked, what do you mean? Naruto said, her father and I, when we checked to make sure that guy we found in her hospital room did not do anything to her, found she had a restriction seal on her back. We think it was from the Kumo nin who tried to kidnap her. Hinata asked, why did you not tell me, Naruto? Naruto said, I forgot. Mom and Kakashi told me the only person they knew who might be able to remove it is Jiraiya. Jiraiya sighed and said, "Let me see the seal, girl." Hinata looked at Naruto a moment and she turned around and raised her shirt back and Jiraiya asked, "Where is his?" Naruto said, "Over her heart in the back." Jiraiya frowned and sent a little chakra to the area and he looked at it and whistled a moment and said, "Interesting." Hinata looked over her shoulder and asked, "What?" Jiraiya said, "It's a memory restrictor. A very good one. Someone took a lot of time on this, so I doubt it was the Kumo Nin. This would have taken about a day to make. Someone put it on you to keep you from remembering something." Naruto blinked and Hinata asked, "Why?" Jiraiya said, "I don't know. Let me undo it and we will find out." As he bit his thumb and started to draw around the seal, and after a few minutes he said, "This will hurt a little." As he activated the seal, Hinata gasped in pain a moment and her eyes closed and she fluttered her eyes. She was disoriented a few minutes and she ran to the bathroom and threw up. Naruto frowned and the third walked toward the bathroom door and asked Hinata, who had closed the door when she went in, "Are you all right?" A few moments later the door opened and she came out a little pale and said, "I saw a Hyuga family secret. I don't want to talk about it." In a weak voice. The third frowned and nodded and Naruto saw the look in Hinata's eyes and said, "Please don't tell anyone about that. I think if someone put the time to put it on Hinata then they would not be happy with it being removed. Please." The third sighed and said, "Very well. Now who exactly was that man?" Naruto said, "He called himself Ramsey. I had met him once before a few months back. He was the man I chased into the woods that day Anbu was sent after me. At that time he had picked my pocket to get my attention. When I caught him he asked me to deliver a message to my mother that he would like to request a meeting about her former home. I didn't really understand what the request was about, but then he showed up there the day we were attacked." "How long was I out anyways?" Hinata said, "3 days." Naruto frowned and asked, "Where's my lightsabers?" The third said, "I have them." Naruto held up his hand and said, "Please return them." The third said, "Not until you tell me about them." Naruto said, "Fine. When people start dying from the explosion don't say I didn't warn you." As he lowered his hand. The third asked, "What explosion?" Naruto said, "Each of my lightsabers have a second seal inside of them that I copied from my father's notes. I say that each lightsaber has the explosive ability of 10 exploding tags to ensure no one learns the secret of the Hiraishin and the lightsabers." The third said, "You're bluffing." Naruto said, "Hinata, you have yours." As he looked at her. Hinata said, "Yes." Naruto said, "Let me see it a moment." Hinata walked over and pulled hers out and handed it to him and he put it under the cover and closed his eyes a moment as he held the cover over it and everyone could hear clicks and pops under the cover and Naruto slowly pulled out a small circled disc and he said, "Here you go, Sealmaster." As he handed it to Jiraiya. Jiraiya looked at it and frowned and he said, "He's telling the truth, sensei. This is one of his father's seals, I know. Only thing I don't know is how it's actually activated, but if it is then this would blow up and kill anyone close by." As he handed it back to Naruto. Naruto repeated what he did earlier and he held the blade above his head and activated it and both blades shot out and he deactivated it and said, "Thank you Hinata and sorry about that, but I had to prove to the third here I spoke the truth." The third asked, "But why would they explode?" Naruto said, "Let's just say that the ones that I held in my arm were held there for a reason. If I don't activate them myself in the correct order once a week after they were last used they will start overloading and blow up and only I know the order. If after the week, sealed or not they will blow up." The third looked at him for several minutes and frowned and said, "Fine. You win." As he reached into his pocket and pulled out a scroll and Naruto unsealed the scroll and saw all of them were there and he nods and covers them up and said, "After you leave I will reset them." The third asked, "What exactly are those?" Naruto said, "My future clan's secret weapons. It's originally a weapon of the Sith and Jedi and they kill to keep it." The third frowned and asked, "How did he get inside of your home?" "I checked with Hinata and she said he let himself in." Naruto sighed and said, "It's my fault. I forgot to reset the security seals after Hinata's birthday the night before and he was able to get in." He looked at her and said, "I trust our home is locked." Hinata said, "Yes. The gates fixed themselves before I returned after the fight." Naruto sighed and said, Dad sure was a genius of seals. Jiraiya said. I want to take you on as my apprentice. Naruto looked at Hinata and said, why should I? Jiraiya said, because I taught your father everything he knows and I can use the force as you call it. Everyone looked at Jiraiya and Naruto said, really, show me. Jiraiya pulled out a small jar and rubbed the content on his face in a funny pattern and his hands became partially webbed and Naruto watched him and he said, that's not the force. This is. As he held up his hand and force slammed Jiraiya into the wall. Everyone looked at Jiraiya who fell out of the crack in the wall and he wiped the weird paint off his face and he said, what was that? Naruto said, the force. I don't know what you used but it wants the force so tell me why should I become your apprentice? Jiraiya said, I can teach you the Rasengan. Naruto said, I have the scrolls for it already, what else? Jiraiya frowned and said, summoning. Naruto said, and after that? Then what? Jiraiya said, sealing. Naruto said, and. Jiraiya blinked and asked, what do you want from me? I have a lot of things I can teach you. Naruto said, look, I have plans to make my own clan, teach my children and become a clan head and go from there. What besides sealing and summoning do you have that could help me with that? Jiraiya said, I can teach you the ways of women. Naruto deadpanned and said, Mom's informed me you're a pervert. If there was another way I would never have let you near Hinata a few minutes ago. As for learning about people have been doing it for millions of years all over the galaxy. It's in our instincts so why should I learn from you? Jiraiya frowned and looked at the third who sighed and nods and Jiraiya said, they're a group of S-rank criminals who have plans to capture each of the Bijus and their Jinchurikis. Even if the Kyuubi is dead they still will come after you and try to extract its power and kill you in the process. Naruto said surprising Jiraiya and the third, black cloaks with red clouds. Jiraiya locked his eyes on Naruto and asked, how do you know that? Naruto said, the force allows me to see the possible future at times. It's not set in stone but I have seen them in the future a few times but I don't know much about them. I do know two of them have the Sharingan. Jiraiya said. 2. Impossible. Naruto said. No, one looks like an older version of Sasuke and the other I know his name from a picture I saw in the history of this village. The third asked. Who is it Naruto? Naruto said. Uchiha Madara. Making both men wide-eyed. The third said. Impossible, Madara died fighting the Shadaime. Naruto said. Hey, I am just telling you what I saw. His Sharingan is funky though, even more than the older Sasuke one. It's not like Kakashi but you can tell it's the Sharingan. Jiraiya asked. Is there any others you might have seen or know or anything that could help us learn who they are? Naruto frowned and said. There's a woman who turns into paper, a guy with these weird rings in his eyes, and a guy who looks like a fish. There's also a plant-looking guy. There's also some puppet guy. Those are the only ones I have seen in my visions that I can remember. Jiraiya had his notebook out and he said, Naruto, if you were to see these men would you be able to identify them? Naruto nods and Jiraiya turned his notebook around showing a drawing and asked, was the guy's eye like that? Showing the Rinnegan. Naruto nods and Jiraiya said, get me a bingo book please sensei. The third asked, do you believe him Jiraiya? Jiraiya said, not at first but I do know a girl several years ago who could control paper as well as a boy with the Rinnegan. It was back during the war in Rain Country and I trained them for a few months so they could survive. Now can you please get me a bingo book? The third sighed and had an Anbu go and get one and he asked, so what else have you seen Naruto? Naruto said, I don't really know. The future is always changing and I can't be for sure that what I tell you will happen or not. It's just a possible future. Only reason I even made a connection was I seen a glimpse of a possible death in the future and I saw those men and what looked like a raccoon being taken from a boy and into a statue. Jiraiya asked, any other visions of the future? Naruto said, some big woman castrating you. Jiraiya paled and said, that's enough of the future for me to know. Hinata was sitting quietly in a chair and Naruto kept glancing at her and he asked, how soon can I get out of here? The third said, tomorrow. Just then an Anbu appeared with a bingo book and Jiraiya grabbed it and flipped several pages quickly and asked, is that one of them? Showing Kisame. Naruto nods and he did the same for Itachi, Sasori, and Zetsu. Jiraiya said. All right, thanks, Gaki. This information will help me check some things. As he wrote it down and closed the bingo book. Naruto nods and asked, is that all you need to know? The third said, for now. Naruto said, then if you don't mind, I would like to rest and leave me and Hinata alone. Both men quietly left deep in thought, and Naruto got out of bed and started to slip on his cloths, and Hinata was looking down, not paying attention, and he created a Kajbunshin and handed it one of his lightsabers, and it left through the window as he was finishing getting dressed, and he walked over and grabbed her hand. Hinata blinked and looked at him as he helped her out of her chair, and he pulled her close, and a few seconds later they were standing inside the temple, and he asked, what's wrong? Hinata was confused a moment, and Naruto grabbed his lightsaber that was on the ground, and she asked, how did we get here? Naruto said, I used the Hiraishin to get us back here. Now tell me what's wrong, Hinata. Hinata said, nothing. As she looked away, Naruto turned her around with his hand under her chin, and he said, don't lie to me. In a commanding voice. Hinata said, I wish to kill the Hyuga Council and my father.